Hey, how you doing, everybody? We're back on another Friday night, and we got a great show for you. So it looks like there's some set troubles on The Mandalorian Season 2, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to pit General Grievous up against Darth Vader. And, of course, there might be some love for the prequels after all. That's right, most people hate the prequels, but now it looks like people are starting to love the prequels. But first, finally, we have the trailer for The Mandalorian Season 2. And it's all going to start right now.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars. Begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're back on a Friday night. So,
yes.
Looks like we got it, man. We got the trailer.
Finally.
You know what? I almost want to believe that it's because we were whining about it so much last week that maybe somebody at Lucasfilm was watching us and going, those guys are right. Maybe we ought to just, release
been whining about it. I mean, it's just been like, okay, really? Like, this thing starts in probably, like, now it's less than a month, and we still haven't seen, like, a peep out of this thing. So, what the heck?
Yeah, well, I mean, and the thing that's funny is how unceremoniously the trailer dropped.
Yeah, it was no, like, no special event, no thing. It's just like, oh, here you go.
Yeah, just like, okay,
Ronaldo's
whatever.
Here joining us. Hey, man, what's up?
Who's joining us?
Ronaldo.
Of course he is. How you doing? Well, as usual, I'm not getting the chats. Probably because of the way this thing... I'm just kidding. We actually are. See, there we go. How you doing, Ronaldo? It's always good to see you, man. It's good to have you back with us. So, what we thought we would do this time is instead of just showing you all the stuff that we think about the trailer, we're actually going to show you the trailer first. We're going to kick things off with the trailer, and then we're going to break it down. So you ready?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Show me the one safety deemed such destruction. You must reunite it with its own kind.
Where?
This you must determine. The songs of eons past tell of battles between Mandalore the Great and an order of sorcerers called Jedi.
You expect me to search the galaxy and deliver this creature to a race of enemy sorcerers?
This is the way.
You know this is no place for a child. Wherever I go, he goes. So I've heard. This is the way.
All right, so that was the Season 2 trailer that we got, finally.
Yeah, finally.
So what'd you think?
It was awesome. I mean, I really liked the... They gave us a chance to see some familiar places, like we see Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
We saw some X-Wings, which I thought was actually kind of surprising.
Yeah, so was I. I actually was really pretty shocked about the whole X-Wing thing. It was kind of jarring, actually, almost to see them.
Exactly, and it looked like we got more stormtroopers. The scout trooper and the biker troopers are out again. And one of the things I thought I forgot about actually is that Sabine Wren is actually in this, and that's played by Sasha Banks. So we finally get a chance to see kind of Sasha Banks sitting back there, which is what really actually surprised me is that we didn't get any Ahsoka, we didn't get any Boba, and we didn't get any Moff Gideon. So I'm kind of wondering, like, okay, we already know that these people are going to be in there. So why aren't they in the trailer?
Well, I think it's, just like in season 1, right? We didn't get any Baby Yoda.
Well, yeah, but we didn't know about Baby Yoda, though.
Well, right. But, I mean, that's all I'm saying is, like, if we already know about them, they probably don't really feel too much of a need to actually put them in there. And I think that they're probably trying to save some things because you have to think in terms of context. Mm-hmm. I think the problem with this season is if they give us too much, it might give us too much context. And I don't think that they want to risk that.
That's a good point. I was reading some comments and reading some things that people have been posting about the trailer, and they were referencing the fact that, they're talking about these group of sorcerers called Jedi, and, everybody's like, well, why does everyone act as though, like, they've never heard of the Jedi? And you and I have talked about this because you were talking about, like, the Sith. Like, like, and everybody's like,
I'm
Sith
saying,
this,
people
Sith
are
that,
like, yep.
Sith,
people are like, actually, it's like, see? Everybody's catching up to me now.
But, I think it's... I think it's one of those things. So if you really think about it, like if you really look at the landscape of Star Wars, at least at this point in time, you have probably 30 years removed from the Jedi, though, 30 or 40 years maybe, because this is taking place after Return of the Jedi, a few years after that. Luke Skywalker was the only one that was truly a Jedi, and people he didn't really truly become a Jedi until he killed Vader.
Yeah.
So really, I mean,
I know, and it's an argument that a lot of people make. The whole fact that there's a lot of people that not only would they not know about the Jedi because of a lot of time passing, but the fact that, like you said, really there's only a handful of. You have what? Vader, Palpatine on the Sith side. You have Yoda, but Yoda's in hiding. Mm-hmm. You had Obi-Wan, but Obi-Wan's in hiding. And I really hope that the Obi-Wan series will shed a little bit of light on how the Jedi diminished. How did they go from this massive army? Mm-hmm. Because remember, at the end of Episode 3, they were hated because Palpatine basically turned everybody against them.
Right.
But it's a lot to go from just being a hated group to being a group that nobody even really remembers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the big things about this is the fact that that no one has seen Jedi in like forever. But once again, you have to think about it. Outside of the Jedi Purge, which was going on throughout after Episode 3, I don't know how long the Purge lasted really, but pretty much most of the Jedi kind of went into hiding, much like Obi-Wan and Yoda. Those who did survive. This is why everybody's wondering, like, where does Ahsoka come from? Because she's popping up out of nowhere. But,
right.
Well,
I got a lot of stuff to say about all this stuff. But before we do, we actually have some people now joining us from Twitch. So welcome, anybody, that's following us on Twitch. We got Level 3 Teapot who says, hope Bill Burr will be back. Yeah. He was so funny in the last season.
He was.
And I totally agree. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I actually was really surprised by how well I really liked this character.
Yeah, I mean, he was actually, pretty hilarious, but he kind of had a little bit of depth to him, though.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, there was actual depth to the character, because it's one thing to just have, somebody come on and be a little bit of comic relief or, just so you could say, oh, look who was on the show or whatever. But, I mean, it's another thing to actually bring somebody on. And that's one of the things that I really like about The Mandalorian, by the way, is that there's no real wasted characters in this show.
No.
Everybody actually has a story. Everybody has depth. They're not two-dimensional characters.
Yeah, definitely. Ronaldo says, I thought Sasha Banks was Sabine, but after looking at the trailer, I think she's a Jedi. She appeared when Mando was talking about the enemy sorcerers.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of there's been some debate about this all around. Like, it's kind of like everybody, when Rosario Dawson was announced, it was like everybody jumped to the fact that she was going to be Ahsoka. But that wasn't necessarily confirmed for a while.
Right.
Now, we know that Sasha Banks is in it, and we've heard that Sabine Wren's supposed to be in it. But I don't remember anything that was talking about an official thing that's who she's actually playing.
I I remember something. I don't know if it was official, but I remember something that was out. Simply because, I mean, it fits the profile, quite frankly.
Oh, I mean, don't get me wrong.
and,
It fits the profile. And here's another thing that I'll point out, too. And some people have pointed this out. Because Sabine has purple hair, or blue hair, or whatever, it's changed a couple of times.
She's worn like multicolored.
Multicolored hair, right?
It's like a gobstopper.
People theorize that that's why she was wearing a hood in the trailer, in order, to find a scene to where it's not really giving it away yet.
True. And she's not wearing her Mandalorian armor, or Mandalorian-ish armor, I guess, if you want to call it that.
But Ronaldo's right, though. You can't dismiss the fact. Again, though, you have to remember that when they do trailers, sometimes they'll actually create a different context.
Right.
They want to throw you off the track. Like, that happened a lot in The Last Jedi, from what I remember. Mm-hmm. Where there were certain scenes, and they try to make it seem like, Rey was going to go dark or whatever, just by... They would take a voiceover from a completely different scene but put it on something else.
Right.
And that gave you the illusion that, oh, okay, I wonder what's going on. So these are the kinds of things that I think that they're doing in this trailer, that they're probably putting things into different context in order to maybe not necessarily mislead you, but
just intrigue you.
Yeah, definitely get you interested and maybe throw you off the track. Because in this day and age, where so much information is just available to us, filmmakers or showrunners have no choice but to employ other tricks so as not to spoil anything.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to spoil the whole show. And we've seen it in time and time again where you'll get a movie trailer and then they show all the best parts in the movie in the trailer.
Oh, man, yes.
And then it's just
I hate that.
Now it's just like, okay, when I go see the movie now, it's like, okay, well, I'm hoping there's something better than this, and it isn't.
Well, you know what's worse is when they show you all the funniest parts.
Yeah.
Like, it's a comedy and, like, all the funniest parts are in the trailer. And then you go and you watch the movie and you're like, oh.
Yeah, because just stayed at home and watch the trailer again. But...
Okay, now anybody that's out there, didn't mean to cut you off, but there's a debate on what planet the ice planet is.
Yeah, I could see, because everybody thinks Hoth, of course.
Right, but there's another one. It's called. Oh man, the name escapes me. It's the planet we've seen.
Ilium?
Yes.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah, the one with the Jedi with the kyber crystals.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. Look at you.
Gotcha. Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, I think that's a plausible one. It seems like, and the fact that they show Tatooine again, you kind of have to wonder about that.
Well, there's somebody did this. I can't believe somebody actually did this. But you know how everybody's going through the trailer like frame by frame and
Right.
pointing out. So somebody actually paused a scene, circled this little thing. Who was it? Somebody was like on the back of a speeder or something, and you could kind of make out Boba Fett's armor and helmet. Now, of course, the rest of us mortals would never have picked up on this because it's kind of a scene that just blows by you.
Right.
I swear, there's like people that just... Now, if anybody that's watching this is one of these people, you're cool, all right? I'm not taking you down with this comment. But there are people out there, though, that will actually watch a trailer like this frame by frame, which would take a while.
Indeed.
But it's true because there's so much that you can miss if you just watch it. Like this is probably like the third or fourth time I've seen this trailer.
Yeah.
And every time I pick up something new. Now, before I brought up the whole Ice Planet thing, what were you going to say?
I was just talking about we were talking about comedy, and I was thinking about the comedy that they actually have. And the cool thing with Star Wars is there is a specific kind of comedy that's associated with Star Wars. And so the whole Baby Yoda thing, when he had like the whistling birds pop out and Yoda's like, nope. He closes a little pod. Like, of course, that's like the most cutest and hilarious, thing in the trailer, but that's typical kind of Star Wars humor. So I'm glad that they're keeping that in the Mandalorian.
Well, and, as long as Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are running this thing, I think that that's going to be a given. These are guys that really understand Star Wars humor. And, like you said, they actually understand the subtleties of it. The fact that it's different from, say, a Marvel or any other franchise that's known for its comedic elements.
Right.
So now that you've seen the trailer, where do you see the plot going now?
Well, I mean, I've always thought, once again, I want to say that I'm glad that Bo-Katan pretty much is still alive.
Yeah.
because last we saw, well, everybody's been pretty much calling her the
armor.
Well,
we don't
know if it's officially Bo-Katan, so I don't
know.
But I've just been calling her Bo-Katan. But yes, the armorer. Like, I like the fact that she survived, because the last time we saw her, she was in like this whole little battle in that cave, and she told Mandalorian, "Hey, go, I got it." And you're just like, man, she was really a really cool character. So to hear her voice again, to see that she still survived was cool.
That is cool.
And as far as like the whole plot, I mean, I think we kind of could tell anyway that, this was going to kind of be the whole gist of it. And now you kind of do get a chance to see it, where they're going to different planets trying to figure out, like, okay, where does this youngling belong? So
you think it's really still going to center on the origin of Baby Yoda, where he comes from, what's going on?
At least at the onset of it all, that's probably what's going to happen. Now, whether it changes midway to something else, that could be.
Well, the thing is, though, do we know how many episodes this thing's going to be yet? Is it 8 or is it 10?
Not sure yet. We don't even we still don't know.
Well, we don't know the duration.
Yeah, I was saying the duration of it either. So, yeah, everything is still kind of up in the air as regards to that. But I'm really curious to see, like, okay, when you start bringing X-wings into the fold, like, okay, what is that about? Because I mean, we get why the Empire is still kind of like, all right, they're still trying to pick up the pieces pretty much after the whole, fall of the Emperor and whatnot. But like, now that you're seeing like X-wings like escorting, basically the
well, that it does make sense,
Razor Crest around. Yeah, you kind of wonder, like, okay, well, what the heck is this about?
Well, let's get to Ronaldo's comment real quick. Yeah,
he says, also, maybe it's just me. In the recent comics, Luke goes to Harbor Planet, and it seems that this is the same planet where Mando is in the trailer.
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible at this point. I don't really know, because if you think about it, when we were seeing all the trailers from season 1, we actually thought, did we even find out what the name of that original planet they were on? The one that where the Jawas were and stuff that we thought was Tatooine but wasn't?
Oh, yeah.
Because remember, in season 1, they didn't really give the names of planets.
No, not like how they did in Rogue One, when they introduced like every planet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Rogue One was like, amazing. It was kind of like, yeah, you got it, like the title, and I remember it was like really fatiguing to watch it, because it was just like they were going from planet to planet to planet really fast. I mean, people complain about the pace of the Rise of Skywalker. Mm-hmm. Dude, that whole first scene and everything in Rogue One.
Yeah, when they're bouncing all over the place.
Yeah, when they're bouncing all over the place and stuff, it was insane. It was really hard to keep up with it.
You got to wonder if they're going to go back to Jeddah, though.
It seems to me like now that they're starting to bring the Jedi and they're bringing the Force and they're bringing the little things. I mean, it's funny. This is easily going to be an hour discussion on this subject alone, because I've got so much stuff to say. And as usual, guys, chat in, because this is a whole big discussion, but we're going for a while. Let's just put it that way. But let me go back for a second to what you were talking about with the whole X-Wing Empire thing, because I think that that's an important thing that cannot be understated. So you have to remember that the rebellion won.
Right.
And so now they're in the midst of establishing the New Republic. But I get the sense that in The Mandalorian, they haven't quite established it yet.
Right.
There's still a little bit of, like, regional government, it seems like. You remember when the Emperor basically was saying, well, I mean, he didn't, but...
Tarkin, well, no, they were talking about the regional governments would keep the systems in line, pretty much. Yeah.
Right, because they were basically going to go into this whole, like, macro-style rule where they were going to just, like, basically fly around with the Death Star. They had a presence. There's a lot of novels that deal with this, that talk about more in depth the Empire and how it actually rules planets, and they'll go and either lay waste to something, or they'll rob it of all of its resources, or enslave its people for something. Other times, though, they just more or less let it go and just let the people who they pretty much put in the position more or less remain in that position. So they have kind of a unique control, and that's why when the Emperor initially fell and the Empire, quote-unquote, fell at Endor, it didn't necessarily destroy the entire Empire right away. I mean, I think that at the end of Return of the Jedi, especially with when the expanded one where they showed all these systems and they were celebrating and stuff. It's not entirely accurate, as they would say in Independence Day, because the Empire still had this whole galaxy-wide hold on everybody. So even though the head fell, and it did throw them into a little bit of chaos, if you read a lot of the new canon expanded universe novels, they talk about how they still have maintained control. And basically what you have is you have this struggle. You have all these Grand Admirals and Moffs and all this stuff are all vying for power because you don't have the Emperor anymore. Because nobody was going to go up against him. But now that he's gone, there's that vacuum of power. So now on the Empire side, they're all struggling on that one. They're all trying to get control. And this is heavily supported in the new canon novels and even the comics. I mean, as Ronaldo pointed out, there's a lot of things in the comics that I'm seeing more and more are popping up in things like The Mandalorian or just even The Rise of Skywalker. And it really feels good to see that there's actually things that are now starting to go cross-platform. There was a good example, too. We talked about it on the show. In fact, Ronaldo... I believe it was Ronaldo, or it could have been DP Dishy or one of our earlier guys.
Regulars, yes.
Yeah, somebody was talking about the Fallen Order connection.
Yeah.
Remember that? Where they were talking about how there was all this stuff that was actually happening in Fallen Order, and it was kind of like really shedding light on canon. And I remember thinking at that time, like, man, maybe I should actually play this game.
I think that might have been Jason.
No, you would think it would be him, but it was before him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is around the time that we started streaming, I think.
Okay.
Started streaming live. Like, we weren't, because, for a long time we were uploading all of our episodes, which you guys are all free to, go back and check out. And while you're at it, hit the like and subscribe buttons on this video. That would really help us out. But yeah, I just think that you have a situation where the Empire is trying to essentially hold itself together. It's trying to hold on to the systems that it does have control over. And it's dealing with this vacuum of power and this whole power struggle. Now, on the rebel side, you have these guys who are now newly conquerors, at least in their minds, and now they're trying to establish the new republic. And this is actually brought up in Bloodline quite a bit. In fact, if you guys really want to read not only an amazing book, but pretty much something that outlines the whole beginning of the government for pretty much the New Republic, pick up Bloodline by Claudia Gray. It really does a great job in outlining this stuff. And this is, I think, where we're at in The Mandalorian. And this is why you have kind of that Wild West vibe.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can imagine because, if everything is kind of, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. The Empire doesn't have control. The rebellion isn't quite set up. So, like, the galaxy itself is kind of, on its side pretty much. And everybody's just trying to find a way to balance everything out. And you don't have a legitimate government where you can go to for certain things. And like you said, the Empire was wide sweeping. It wasn't just, just, all right, we had these few systems. I mean, they had people everywhere, all across the galaxy, who had control over different stuff. And so there's still some regimes and things that, some people may have still been able to hold some things together, at least for a little while, until people realize, like, hey, there's no more Empire. Why are we still listening to these people? So
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the things that I think that a lot of times people forget about the general citizens. And the other thing, too, is that when you really look at this whole thing, it's all the people in the middle, your smugglers, your bounty hunters, your normal business, more corporate people or whatever. There's a lot of those guys. And they get featured a little bit in the movies, series, and stuff like that, but they're mostly background characters. Whereas I think now, in something like The Mandalorian, they could really shine.
Oh, yeah. Well, even like that whole underground boxing, thing they had, like that.
Right.
Like, I mean, and you can hear, like, there's, the guy with the Cyclops looking dude. He's just like, oh yeah, I've heard. Like, his name is getting filtered out, in that underworld, it's its own community. No different than how they had it on Coruscant when they had the
underbelly of Coruscant.
Yeah, the underbelly of Coruscant. That's a whole nother world down there. So, you had all the bright politicians and the medical people all up top, but then the undercrust of the world is kind of like where the poor and impoverished, those are, in the underground of Coruscant. So now that everybody, and it's kind of weird, it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of indicative of what's going on today because, take the pandemic, for example, everybody was suffering. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor, everybody was affected by this thing. And I feel like that's the same thing that's happening in Star Wars right now, where the government and everybody's just trying to figure their way out and how to get back to some sense of normalcy.
Oh, yeah.
Ronaldo says, maybe Mando was working alongside the New Republic. I think it would be kind of hard to imagine that Mando is having trouble with the Empire and the New Republic, and that New Republic is not aware of it. Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess it kind of depends because, once again, you're dealing with these mass regimes. And so, yeah, you might have Mando, he's just got this little Yoda thing walking around with him. But, I'm sure that, now that Gideon has gotten involved, he's a higher level Moff. So maybe there's some things that's kind of going through the channels now because Gideon's like, okay, I'm trying to acquire this being. So maybe that might have tipped some things off to people. But primarily, I think I can see Moff Gideon kind of being one of those guys where he wants to kind of keep things kind of contained within himself. Like his governance, his thing, he's kind of the figurehead behind all of this. I think he's kind of one of those guys that's trying to keep things to himself because this is what's going to possibly help him ascend to possibly where he could be the next emperor, if you will.
Well, I think,
or in that type of position.
Right, and I think that what we have to do, you have to get back to the first season because you have to remember somebody wanted Baby Yoda.
Yeah, to begin with.
Yep. And I think we've lost sight of that.
Yeah, that's how this whole thing started.
The whole thing started. And at first we thought it was Werner Herzog's character, but it wasn't. Mm-hmm. He was just kind of like the guy that was procuring the whole thing, and
he was the middleman, pretty much.
Yeah, and he was going to turn it over to that scientist or whatever, that doctor. Mm-hmm. But even that guy was working for somebody. There's somebody that wants Baby Yoda for a particular reason, and we know that it's affiliated with the Empire.
Yep.
If it isn't the Empire itself. Mm-hmm. So it comes down to who?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be Moff Gideon, but it seems like even somebody's pulling his strings too. Maybe. I mean, I could see Moff Gideon kind of being that kind of guy. One, just because from what we've seen from him. Yeah, he almost seems like the Moff version of Thrawn.
Yeah.
Thrawn's a Grand Admiral.
Or like another Tarkin. Like, he reminds me of another Tarkin in a way. Where he's very well-spoken, he's very militant, and he's very calculating, and he has and the fact that he's in possession of this whole dark saber, it just, in the title Moff in and of itself, he already has the power.
Yeah, but the thing that mystifies me is he doesn't have enough power in my mind. He's not a Grand Moff.
No, he's not a Grand Moff.
So it makes me wonder why he's not a Grand Moff. Because he obviously has the qualifications to be a Grand Moff, and he has the Darksaber. Well, how did he get it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think this is a whole ploy for him to ascend to that level.
Yeah, but I mean, even under the Emperor's rule, I mean, the Darksaber is kind of a big deal. You'd think the Emperor and Vader would keep a little bit better track of it, that a Moff wouldn't have it.
Well, we don't know when he acquired it either.
Right. Well, I'm sure he didn't acquire it. Well, okay. No, you got a point, because there is 5 years between the end of that and the Mandalorian. So he could have acquired it. It has to be. He had to have gotten it after that, because there's no way in the world that he would have had it and the Emperor and Vader wouldn't know about it.
Well, especially, and I think that would make the most sense, because if you think about it, maybe Gideon was aware of the fact that, okay, Vader was a Force user. Maybe he found out Palpatine was a Force user or something like that. Or he realized, hey, even if he didn't realize Palpatine, let's just say he didn't know Palpatine was a Force user. Vader alone, being the enforcer that he was, wielded like tons and tons and tons of power. So if he's like, okay, well, you know what? I may not be the next Palpatine, but I can sure enough be the next Vader. So if I can acquire like, oh, look, a Darksaber. All right, cool. I'll acquire this. And then now I found out there's a being out here that could possibly give me the abilities of the Force. Well, then now I'm pretty much unstoppable. Now any other being probably wouldn't be able to stop me unless it's a Luke Skywalker or what have you, which they probably don't even know about at this point. So,
it does make me wonder, though, because, Luke being the one instrumental in doing it. But you're right. From everybody else's standpoint, they would have looked at it like the rebellion blew up the Death Star, and that's what killed everybody.
Yeah. Because, you really didn't know, like, Luke kind of went on his own kind of side mission anyway. Yeah. His thing was kind of secretive. It's not like they captured him. He was like, he gave himself up.
Well, it does make me wonder, though.
People only knew about it, probably.
Yeah, but it makes me wonder because, he was captured, right? And he was on the AT-AT, and then they brought him up. So, obviously, he was in the Death Star. I wonder how many people saw him being brought to the Emperor.
Probably very few.
I would think so.
And if it's very few, they probably still wouldn't even know who he was. Think how many people are in the rebellion. You got this one guy.
Not the rebellion. The Empire.
No, but I'm saying like the Empire is looking at the rebellion as a whole. So it's like you don't know the difference between a Han Solo and a Luke Skywalker if you're just a regular worker.
No, that's true. But I was talking about actually on the Death Star itself. So when he's being brought up to the Empire or to the Emperor, how many people on the Death Star, like Imperial guys, actually saw him being taken up there?
Oh,
see, that's what I'm saying because. You have to look at it because we're talking about Moff Gideon. So from the Empire's perspective, it's like how many people knew really that or suspected that maybe this Luke Skywalker guy is the one that did something.
Well, one, I could tell you this much. More than likely, most people didn't see him go to the Emperor because, quite frankly, people weren't just allowed to go up there anyway. Everybody just can't go see the Emperor.
Yeah, he didn't exactly have an open door policy.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's just like, hey man, just not gonna. Hey, I just wanted to know what you want for lunch.
Well, my favorite thing was that one where that one admiral or whatever went to Vader. It's like, what is it, Admiral? It's just like. You were rolling the dice if you interrupted these guys for any reason. Like, you better have a really good reason for coming up there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wouldn't want to be that guy.
Just like when General Veers went to go see him initially, before he did the surface attack, it's like, all right, cool. But
they had to be just like kind of shaken too. Like,
well, you can see it on their face when they.
Yeah.
When they're trying to explain, well, he thought that he's as clumsy as he is stupid. And you're like. Okay. Like, I'm not arguing with you on that one.
What are you going to say?
Yeah.
It just had to be. Like, you want to talk about one of the most stressful positions in the Empire. Being the admiral that has to report to Vader.
Well, especially you're seeing him, his helmet is off, he... Yeah, it's just like...
It's kind of like, am I supposed to see this? Is this one of those, like, if you see me with the helmet off,
I
you're
have
done?
To kill you. Yeah, I have to kill you.
It just... And what was funny, too, is you could see the almost disgust in his face. Like, that's kind of gross.
That's freaky.
It's like, no wonder he's in a bad mood all the time. I would be, too, if I looked like that.
Well, also, just like walking in on your boss naked or something. Like, all right. Sorry.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that I think is really funny about this whole thing is the fact that there's only a handful of people that had access to these guys.
Yeah.
And a Moff wouldn't necessarily be high enough in the food chain to regularly report to the Emperor Vader.
No. Well, Vader maybe.
Maybe, but usually it's Grand Moffs that he does. One of the things that I really enjoy about all these new canon novels is they go a lot into the whole structure of everything. Mm-hmm. So you get more of a sense on who these people are, especially on the Empire side. On the Empire side.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're looking at, like, if you got to think of an admiral is able to have access to Vader, certainly a Moff will be able to.
Well, yeah, I see what you're saying. It's almost like a Grand Moff is kind of like the military version of a Grand Admiral, and then Moff would be like Admiral.
Well, no, it's actually more like Like you got like generals and colonels, so it's like Grand Moff would probably be more like a colonel, and then you probably have like a Moff would probably be more.
Well, it's
so
kind of
like a
weird
general.
anyway, because what is a Moff? I mean, it was
I don't
one
know
of
who
those
chose.
things.
I don't know why they chose that name.
I don't
anyway.
know. Well, the thing is like, okay, admirals, grand admirals, you get that. That's naval, right? But it's
Especially
like
when
a
you got
Moff.
ships, you got it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's kind of like their whole armada. It's more like a navy. I mean, a Moff seems like it's more like a governing type. Because remember, they used to call him Governor Tarkin.
True.
You know, so it's kind of like, okay, even with all the stuff that I've read and all the stuff that I deal with, I've never really been. I think I've looked it up a couple of times, but
Ronaldo says, "I was curious that we didn't see Ahsoka considering the rumors. There's a possibility that she would only appear in one episode."
well, I could see that if what they're saying is true as far as this being like a pilot. See, there's been some people that have been actually saying that what's going to happen is that there's going to be a Mandalorian episode that's going to more or less function as a pilot episode for the Ahsoka series. So that could actually be true. You know, that she could only appear in one episode. I honestly think that she wasn't in the trailer only because it would give away too much. Even though we already know that she's going to be in it. That part is undisputed. However, we don't know the context. And the problem is there might not be any scenes, especially if, like, you know, Ronaldo, but if you're saying is true, then if she's only in one episode, then there would be almost no scenes that you could give away that wouldn't put a little bit of context. Because remember, you don't want to give away too much of the plot. Yes, I think that the main story arc that's going through this is going to be where does Baby Yoda come from and who wants him and why. But I think it's bigger than that. And I think that they're not trying to tell us everything. And especially when you consider, what do they say, like 5 seasons is what they wanted to do?
Yeah, somewhere around that.
Yeah, well, you can't, well, I mean, I guess you could, but I don't see them, you know, making the whole 5 seasons, which would be like, you know, 40 to 50 episodes of where does Baby Yoda come from and what do they want. You know, at some point things have to shift. And I think what they're doing is they're bringing stuff in that's also setting up future story arcs.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that. I could see the fact that it starts off with them trying to acquire Baby Yoda, and then, of course, you know, in the midst of that, they probably uncover like, oh, this is why they want him, and then this leads to this bigger plot, and this is the real story behind it.
Sure, because why do they want him?
Yeah.
Now, it could be like what you're saying, and it's a case of a Moff with a, you know,
Power complex
yeah,
or
like a power complex that figures, hey, I got a dark saber, now I need a little bit of the Force or something.
Which, to answer your question, Moff was the rank held by the sector governors of the First Galactic Empire.
That's not confusing at all, right?
Moffs were in command of their sectors group, a formation that contained assets from the Imperial military and intelligence. So, Moffs could be appointed by the Emperor or an advisor, but were obligated to report to both.
Okay.
So, you're right. I mean, they're actually pretty much like governors. They're like sector governors.
So then a Grand Moff would be what?
It's a political title held in the, let's see, a Grand Moff.
Grand Moff Tarkin.
They were governors of the oversectors, which were grouped star systems and sectors.
Okay, so basically they're just like a Moff might be in charge of like a particular region.
So like a Moff is like a mayor, and then like
the Grand Moff is like a
the
governor. Yeah,
that's why that's Governor Tarkin.
Right, which is interesting.
Yeah,
because I used to think that was just, you know, because the thing that's funny is they never actually refer to Moff or Grand Moff. I remember when I was, you know, 6, 7 years old when I saw Star Wars for the first time. And it was just called Star Wars back then. It did not have any kind of New Hope. I remember when it was re-released in the theaters like a year later in 78, and then it said A New Hope, like Episode 4, A New Hope.
You thought it was a new movie or something?
Well, I'm kind of like, no. I mean, the thing that was funny, it actually drove my little 7-year-old or 8-year-old mind nuts. Because I turned to my dad, I'm like, I don't remember it saying that. Like, and then I started, my mind went to where everybody's mind goes. It's like episode 4. Well, is that a typo?
Yeah.
Because,
I get it. Yeah.
I don't see where 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, I mean, that just threw me off, man. I mean, that was just crazy. Well, it was a similar thing that happened when the action figures came out. Because all you ever heard in A New Hope was Leia saying Governor Tarkin.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get the action figure and it says Grand Moff Tarkin. And I'm like, I don't even know what is that? Like, there's nothing that explained it.
Right.
What they did was, like, on the back of the action figures, they would have, like, a little
description.
Yeah, a little description or synopsis of the character, and,
Yeah, and that was it. But not really the rank.
Yeah, and it's just,
the title,
it's kind of a really weird, wacky way that Lucas went about doing all this stuff. Because, I mean, he obviously had, like, some sort of a thing going.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like he was just making it up. I mean, some of the stuff. But a lot of it, there was obviously a structure to this thing. And, nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, the Grand Admiral, all that stuff, you get that. Captain.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it goes to this other thing, you're kind of confused.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, it's one of those ever, evolving things that we learn in Star Wars. Those of us who take the time to look at and just kind of, one day I'm going to just look this up and just see what it is.
Well, and that's a funny thing. I actually did look that up a long time ago, and then, like everything else, you kind of forget because it's not really that vital. But now here's a question for you. Being that he was escorted, the Mandalorian I'm talking about, by X-Wings, which side do you think he's actually on?
I don't think he's on any side. I mean, I think that's what makes the Mandalorian kind of cool, is that he's much like any of the other characters that we've seen who are smugglers, almost like a Han Solo or anything like that. Like, you're just kind of... I think he has an obligation. I think he feels obligated to this particular creature, and I think he just wants to see this thing.
Well, he definitely says, where you go, I go, or something like that. Or I go where he goes. Or...
Yeah, he's definitely formed an attachment to it. Mm-hmm. But it's like, okay, now... But, like, once it's done, like, okay, once he gets to this home world and find his people, let's just say, well, then what? Like, where do you go? Like, where do you go from here?
No, I don't think that's going to happen, because if you remember the armor, when she was talking to him or something, it was almost like he's like a foundling now. That little baby Yoda. So it's almost like he's kind of like the dad. Like, it's kind of an official thing. Like, there's no just... I mean, they obviously had to figure out where he's from and, what the deal is.
Well, but they kept saying that he had, you had to... There's this whole battle between Mandalore and a group of sorcerers called Jedi. And he's like, wait, you want me to deliver this to our enemy who are a bunch of sorcerers? So it's like, the plan is still to, offload Baby Yoda somewhere. But it's kind of like...
Yeah, but I think it's really more like, what's he do? Because if you think about it from the Mandalorian's point of view, and I don't mean the Mandalorian, I mean all of the Mandalorians. Mm-hmm. If you look at it from their point of view, they're already underground because of the whole Empire thing, right? Mm-hmm. They were forced underground. They can't take their helmets off. They have all these other new little rules now that they had to, because they had to go into hiding, basically. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you suddenly see this species, who essentially anybody that knows about the Jedi knows about Yoda. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at this essentially baby Yoda, they're like, oh, because now they're afraid that not only are they on the run from the Empire, but now they've got to deal with a possible resurgence of the Jedi. And it's like they don't really know what's the deal with this little baby Yoda thing. So it's kind of like, I think that what they're doing is they want Mando or Din Djarin to take him back and be like, okay,
look, this is yours.
What's up with this?
Well,
isn't speculation a wonderful thing?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where he's got to take him back because, of course, I think it's all about purpose. everything has its purpose. And I think like Mando, he kind of knows what his purpose is, but like we don't know what the purpose is for Baby Yoda. So we know that the Empire definitely has something nefarious planned for Baby Yoda, but now that he's out of their clutches, it's like, okay, what is this baby, what is his destiny pretty much? And that's pretty much what Star Wars has always been about. It's about destiny. And of course, destiny changes from time to time. So you might have Mando starting off one way and then he ends up no different than Solo. Like he started off being selfish and just all about self. And then now he becomes a selfless individual. And then now he's all, joined up with the rebellion. So who knows? Mando might join up with the New Republic.
Well, I was going to say, when you were making the point earlier, I was going to say that Din seems more like Lando than anything else.
Yeah.
Kind of like, it's almost like a reluctant hero kind of thing,
Ronaldo says, I agree. I think Mando is not with the New Republic or the Empire. If the Republic is really helping him, I imagine he's like, I'm only going to be your ally while you help me with the child. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because look, don't get me wrong. I don't think that he's, looking to sign up for the Rebellion or the New Republic or whatever you want to call it at this point. But what I mean by which side is he on, I'm really more talking about like his overall, I guess, moral code. It's kind of like, obviously, he's not necessarily going to join up. It's almost like, and this is where we could bring up Han Solo and Lando. They're pretty much good people. I mean, they were doing somewhat shady things, but they basically had an honor code. They basically had good intentions, things like this. They weren't. And one of the things that I love about the new canon books too is the fact that they do show a very human side of the Empire, because everybody forgets that the Empire was the Republic.
Right.
And so you have people who think that these guys are terrorists and that the Empire is the one saving the galaxy from this terrorist threat.
Right. I think what's happening with Mando and the baby or the child.
Mando and the baby. It sounds like some sort of weird sitcom, but all right.
But I think the reason why Mando is so attached to it is because he looks at it as innocent, no different than how he was when he was a child.
Oh, definitely. And I think that whole foundling thing.
I think that's really the thing for him, and I think that's why he has such an attachment to it, because even when he's doing bounties on people, he's like, look, it's nothing personal. It's this business. It's like, okay, you owe these people money, or this is the bounty that's on your head. And people are begging like, oh, well, I'll double it, or I'll do this. And he's like, yeah, whatever. Almost like, no breaks, no deals. Almost kind of like how The Rock was in the movie The Rundown. He's just kind of like, look, it's nothing personal. It's just a job. I don't care, what they do with you. It's not my problem. It's just, this is my job to retrieve you. And that's it. Whereas when he comes across, Baby Yoda, and he's like, okay, you're when he runs across it with the, almost like that, what was it, the IG-11?
Yeah.
And IG-11 was going to terminate it. And it was just like, dude, it's a baby. I think that's where it's like, okay, now this is just ridiculous.
Well, I will say this. You made a really good thing that I didn't really think about before, whereas he kind of remembers, and they actually do juxtapose this in the flashback where, he's this innocent little kid, and these battle droids are about to kill him and his family, and a Mandalorian saves him. Well, now you have, not only are these other bounty hunters after, but I think it really hits home when IG-11, who is a droid, now is about to kill him, and it's like it kind of brings back that whole memory of him, and now he's remembering what the Mandalorian did for him, and now he's a Mandalorian, so he's going to do that for Baby Yoda.
Exactly.
I mean, that's actually a really good connection that has to have been on purpose.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I believe so. I mean, and I think that's where this whole thing goes. And, he knows what it was like to not have a family.
Yeah.
He was adopted by the Mandalorians, but he belonged to someone else at some point, and that was taken from him. And I think that's where his moral code, when it comes to this youngling of Baby Yoda, he's like, okay, I want to give him the opportunity that I didn't have.
Oh yeah, because if you think about it, a lot of this, abandonment, family. A lot of these things are common threads throughout this whole show. The need to belong.
And that's common throughout Star Wars, period.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Because Rey was the same way. Luke felt like, okay, I don't belong here. There's this whole, once he found out that his father was like, okay, who his father was and what he did. And it's like, oh, wow, well, I didn't know all this. And now I want to belong to the same thing. I want to be a Jedi Knight like my father. You know what I'm saying? Like, so all of these reoccurring themes are in Star Wars. It's just now we're getting it from a different lens.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, too, because the Mandalorians were something, again, we only really saw through the Fets, and they weren't even really Mandalorians. They just kind of... And then, of course, Clone Wars came out, and we saw a lot more of the Mandalorians, and then we got a little bit more of their story through Rebels. So it's really nice to see a live-action series that's based on these people. Because they got a really interesting story.
Yeah.
Because they were basically conquered by the Empire at one point. They were actually taken over by Maul, of all people. And then, that didn't work out so well. And then they kind of recaptured their whole way of life and everything. And then, of course, they were pretty much forced underground again, it looks like.
Yeah, and it was cool to see Gina Carano again. She's popping up back in season 2, so that's cool.
Yeah, I'm really happy that... the Cara Dune character,
yeah, the Cara Dune.
It's one of those things that I didn't really think that I was going to care about that much. But I'm really surprised by how much I really resonate with her character. Same thing with Grief Karga, Carl Weathers' character. Again, another character that would just seem a little bit, I don't really want to say a throwaway character because, as I said at the beginning of the show, one of the things that I love about this show is there are no throwaway characters. They all have depth. But I was really surprised by how well I liked it. I mean, I was really happy to see him back in this season.
Well, especially how funny he was, too, in season 1.
Well, yeah.
Come
I mean,
on, do the magic hands.
Yeah, magic hands. I mean, that was priceless.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the Cara Dune character. I mean, there's a lot of these characters that sometimes seem, well, it's kind of like Zori Bliss in Rise of Skywalker. I really enjoyed her character, too. But, a lot of times they'll bring in these, not necessarily female, but just, it could be male or female, but they're kind of like almost like these side bounty hunter type or smuggler type or anti-heroes or whatever that just become they basically light a path for the hero and play a little bit of a part and then they're gone. But with her, I was like, she's kind of like part of the team. I want to see her team up with Mando, and I was so happy when I saw her come back later in the season because at first it almost looked like she was just going to have that single story arc.
Yeah.
But then when she popped up again in another episode and then she was kind of with them, I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, right.
Because they make a really good team. In fact, I hope it's sort of like the trio of her, Grief, and Din.
Yep. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and there's just so much in this trailer.
So who do you think Sasha Banks is?
I have to believe that it's Sabine.
Okay.
I have to because first of all, Sabine is an actual Mandalorian, a prominent one at that, and she was also at one point the owner of the Darksaber.
Yeah.
So if they're bringing the Darksaber into the Mandalorian, I can't imagine them not bringing Sabine, who herself is a Mandalorian. And she was a Mandalorian kind of at the time when they were sort of in their heyday still.
Now, she's the one who mentioned about the whole Jedi sorcerer thing, but she actually knew Ahsoka.
Oh, yeah.
So...
And, well...
Ezra and,
Well, yeah, there's Ezra and Kanan and all that, but yeah, Ahsoka as well, right.
So I'm always wondering why, so I'm kind of curious as to how she's going to explain the Jedi to Mando.
See, that's why I think that she's in there. Either her or Bo-Katan. Either one of them can do it because of her connection with Obi-Wan. It's one of those, the Jedi really aren't our enemies kind of a thing. Somebody has to be the bridge between Mando and the Jedi.
Yeah.
Because right now he's thinking like, oh, These guys are like these weird sorcerers that were once our enemies. I mean, it's not like he really knows, but he just knows what he's been told.
Right.
So it's kind of like, okay, well, somebody has to explain this to him and set him straight.
Yeah. And the cool thing, it seems like, of course, they're jetting across the galaxy, which I always love. So just to even see them do kind of like regular stuff, like it was weird to see them like on a cargo ship, just sailing along like it was like a normal movie, but like he's in Mandalorian armor and he's got this little baby with him, but they're on this whole cargo ship.
Well, there's a
sailing.
lot of scenes in this thing where you're just like, I wonder what the context of this scene is. I wonder what the context of that scene is. It's crazy. Ronaldo has something. He's saying, speaking about Cara Dune, I think she's really interesting. When I heard she left the rebellion, I was like, but they're the good guys. Why? She's the opposite of Finn in some ways.
No, she left the Empire.
No. She was a rebel gunner.
Cara?
Yeah. I thought the same thing, but then when you see further into the episode, she was actually part of the rebellion.
But I thought she was a parachuter or something for like the Empire.
Nah, go ahead and look it up. You know what I have to do for these things, because you actually bring up a lot of these articles and sometimes you even read them? I got to bring your computer into the system so we could switch to it once in a while. So everybody else can see what we're doing. But yeah, she was a shock trooper.
Yeah, but that was...
Shock troopers were also part of the rebels, I guess.
Oh, yeah, they said she's a former rebel shock trooper.
Yeah.
Turned mercenary.
They actually say that in one of the episodes, because I was kind of surprised too, because I always thought that it was an Empire thing, and then when I saw that episode, I'm like, oh, rebels have shock troopers? Because usually when they say trooper, you're thinking that
Empire, and maybe that's why I was totally thinking that.
Yeah, so Ronaldo's like, I think Sasha Banks is some kind of Jedi bodyguard who doesn't speak a lot. Well, that could be too. I mean, if she's not Sabine, so okay, if she's not Sabine, who could she be? Everybody goes quiet.
I mean, she could be one of the,
like a cast member, maybe.
She could be one of the.
Maybe she just got a robe on sale. Maybe she was walking down the street and bought it.
I mean, a lot of people wear robes, anyway, in the Star Wars galaxy. But no, I think she could be maybe another like hidden Jedi, I guess. But then once again, though, or maybe a pupil of Ahsoka's.
This is gonna sound so stupid when I say it.
What?
I actually thought it was cool that she was wearing a red robe. Usually, it's either that Jedi brown or whatever, or it's black. I mean, you don't usually see a lot of colors of the robes.
Well, I mean, because I was thinking maybe she could be like one of the Jedi that escaped the Purge. But she's still too young, though.
Oh, yeah. Way too young.
So she couldn't be that. So she would have to be either a student of Ahsoka's, which could make sense if we're setting up this whole girl movement,
Oh, it's kind of like,
thing.
Is it Barriss Offee and...
Yeah.
And,
Barriss Offee and...
Was she the teacher or the student? I always get them mixed up.
Barriss was a student.
Okay. We just... Yeah.
Her name was Undule?
No, it was we did the whole Duel of Fates on her.
I know, but yes, her name is Undule.
You're gonna look it up, aren't you?
Of course.
Yeah, well, hey, that's why it's there.
Yep.
You guys gotta help us.
If Jason was here.
Yeah, if Jason was here, there'd definitely be he'd give us a whole backstory and everything. But that's who it reminds me of, though. If it's like that, if she's like with Ahsoka or whatever, then it's definitely going to be that whole, Barriss Offee thing. So while you're looking that up, Ronaldo's like, but what if she is a dark side user? Ooh, hey, the red robe could... that's a good question. That's actually a really good question, honestly, because... Up until now, we're just assuming that it's all Jedi that we're going to see. And we do know that we have Moff Gideon, who's...
Luminari, Unduli.
Luminari, that's it.
I knew Unduli is like part of her name, but yeah, that was her last name.
You got that right.
Luminari, though. Yeah, that was her name.
But it is. It really is intriguing that she could be a dark side user. That would actually be a thing that I think would be kind of a cool thing if they did that. Honestly.
I don't think so, though.
Well, don't get me wrong. First of all, for the record, I think it's Sabine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's number one answer, but
we're just, we have to,
here.
we have to explore all the possibilities, though. Number one, if we do that, chances are one of them's going to be right, and we're going to look like geniuses when this thing premieres.
I think, well, I wouldn't go with a dark side user, but what I would say, she could be a, almost like a Maz in a way, like a person who's been around, who's seen things, who's,
Well, don't forget, Maz is also force sensitive as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think she may be force sensitive. But I don't think she's either or. I don't think she's Jedi nor Sith or dark side
well,
user.
Look, you have a point. Just because they're wearing a robe doesn't make them a force user.
Yeah, and it seems like she's tracking the Mandalorian for whatever reason, which is why I'm always thinking Sabine Wren, because she would have a high interest in there's a Mandalorian running around,
Well, let's just look at the evidence. We know that Sabine has to pop up in this thing.
Right.
Because we know that she survives the events of the original trilogy.
True.
The second thing is, what better show? I mean, if you're going to have a show all about Mandalorians, you're going to put your prominent Mandalorian character in.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you look at Sasha Banks, she is the right age to play Sabine at this time.
Yeah.
So I think that but again, like I said, it's kind of fun though to speculate on the other stuff because it could be. I mean, you never know. I mean, here, let me say this though. I don't think that they're going to do the dark side thing only because if you start to bring in dark users and then you have other Jedi, now it's going to lose the whole scope of the Mandalorian. It's going to become this whole Jedi Sith thing again.
Well, that's I was trying to decide if I wanted to wait to bring this up.
All right, before you bring it up, Ronaldo says, or maybe Luke sent his students to find force-sensitive children and she found the child. Well, yeah, I mean, you're on fire today, Ronaldo. Huh? Yeah.
Now, that's a good
possibility. That is a very good possibility, is that maybe that she's just like a student of Luke's. And because I do think that eventually, especially if we're going 5 seasons here, it is plausible that Luke's name's going to get mentioned. I don't think there's going to be a Mark Hamill cameo or anything like that, although there is rumors that the Cyclops dude was actually Mark Hamill, like doing the voice.
His last prediction, she's Mara Jade.
Oh. And they would still want to cover up the hair because Mara's is red.
That's scarlet, yep.
The only thing is, though, well, I was going to say she might be a little young, though, to be Mara Jade.
Yeah, I was about to say she seems a little...
She'd have to be a little bit, because, and again, we are at, right, so Luke, around the time of Return of the Jedi, is probably 25-ish.
Who, Luke?
Yeah. Because he was around 19 in A New Hope.
Right.
And he was about 20, 21 max. So he's probably like really more like 23. Well, okay. You know what? Yeah, she would be the right age. So it could be Mara Jade. It would be cool if they introduced Mara Jade, but I don't think they're going to do that in The Mandalorian. But hey, they're putting everybody else in there. Why not? Okay. So you were debating on whether or not you wanted to bring something up.
Yeah. But you know what?
You're going to hold off?
I'm going to hold off.
You're teasing us and you're going to hold off?
I'm going to hold. I'm not going to. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold off until we get to the Cantina.
All the way to the Cantina?
Hey, at least it's still part of the show. I could have said I'll wait the next week. Don't tempt me.
Yeah, all right. It's like one more word, mister, and it's next month. It'll be like when the whole show premieres.
Right.
You know, we're going to have to do another Mandalorian review show when this thing comes out.
Oh, of course. Especially like the first episode. We got to go,
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting is the fact that, and we'll see how it works out, but what day is it premiering this year? Well, I know October 30th is on a Friday, so it's looking like the show is still going to be on Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
Which means what would be hilarious is if we were able to watch it before we go live.
Oh, yeah.
and then do the review. Even though everything would be, I don't know, it almost seems to me like we should actually do a separate review show, though. Give us more content. All the stuff like what we're threatening to.
Well, I mean, hey, what do you guys think?
Yeah.
What should we do?
Right. What do you guys think? You think we should make the reviews? Well, it's like a two-part question. Number one, do you think that we should just do the reviews as part of our Friday show? Do you think we should do a separate show? If you think we should do a separate show, should we do it live or pre-recorded? I know the answer to that. But yeah, it's one of those things that they have introduced so much in this trailer that it's really hard to pinpoint a lot of things. Because another thing that they didn't show is Boba Fett.
All right.
And he's being played by like 2 different actors.
Mm-hmm.
So what's up with that? Another one, there was another actor that was announced. It was one of the bigger actors announced early on. And we weren't sure like who he was playing or whatever. And oh man, it's been a minute. But there's been like a lot of people that they've announced that we did not see in this trailer.
Well, I mean, we know that, of course, Ahsoka, of course, well, I mean, even we still didn't see Gideon yet.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like new people.
Oh.
Because remember, one of the things that we kept saying during this whole thing, like the last, I don't know, couple of months or whatever that we've been doing this show, is that they've announced like everybody. It seemed like every character alive was going to be in this stupid season. And it got to the point where we thought it might be the Tim Burton Batman problem, where it's like, look, if you start introducing too many characters, you're not going to be able to focus on them. The thing I really loved about the first season is that they had characters weaving in and out, but they never deviated from the main story, really. It all, even that one episode that took place on Tatooine, which was a little bit weird because it really didn't, one of the complaints that people had was that it really didn't do anything to advance the story. And if you're only going to have like 8 episodes or something, why waste an episode?
Yeah.
So
you can't waste any episodes when you have.
Right, and that was the big thing. It was like, here's a bunch of fan service. Oh, they're on Tatooine. Oh, and by the way, Mark Hamill did voice the droid bartender in that. So the thing is, everybody thought that it was kind of a throwaway thing. However, if it turns out to be true that at the end of that episode, it was Boba Fett's boot that we saw, that more or less set him up for the second season, and then it wouldn't be a throwaway. So
yeah, yeah. I just feel like with this, especially with the momentum that the Mandalorian has been carrying, the anticipation. I think that they can't afford to, especially with the hits that Star Wars has been taking. Like,
oh yeah,
I just think it you can't.
They
really,
can't mess
you
up
can't,
the
you can't,
one show
that's really like
that's
holding,
resonating with people. Yeah,
it's holding everything together. And
I'll tell you though, if it were anybody but Filoni and Favreau, I would be concerned. But I don't think they're going to drop the ball. But one never knows. The problem is if Lucasfilm, and Kathleen Kennedy starts to rear her ugly head into this whole thing, then it could be, oh, yes. Yes. Ronaldo says, is the actor you were talking about Timothy Oliphant? Yes. That's who I was talking about. Yeah, he was one of them. Actually, there was a couple of them. He was one. There was another guy, too, where it was kind of like one of those, oh, wow, he's in it kind of things. And that's what I'm saying. They announced all these people, and then they announced all these characters.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be like some other fighter or something like that was supposed to be.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think it was like a normal actor or something.
I think it was an actor, but like almost like a martial art. Almost like, not saying it's him, but like, oh yeah, Jean-Claude Van Damme is going to be in this. Like, whoa.
Yeah, no, it wasn't somebody like that.
Not somebody like of his caliber, so to speak, but
No, but I mean, it wasn't even like a fighter. Like, it was a normal, kind of like another Timothy Oliphant. It's like they announced, I don't know. It'd be like if they said Tommy Lee Jones was going to be in it or something. It was somebody like that. Just somebody, and you're kind of like, oh, wow, this person's actually doing a Star Wars thing. And the thing is that not only did they announce all these actors, but then they announced all these characters that are going to be in it. And it's just like, well, are they... It's like they're shooting with season 3 right now, but it's like, well, did they save anybody for season 3? Because it seems like they're putting everybody into season 2. And I was encouraged when I saw the trailer for that reason. Because the trailer actually was very nice. It was constructed. It was...
Michael Biehn.
Yes, that's who it was. That's who I'm thinking of. Michael Biehn. He was the guy that I'm like, who's he playing?
Yeah.
So you have these people that, for all we know, maybe we did see him in the trailer. Because don't forget, Nick Nolte is the one that played the little Ugnaught.
Yep.
So it was kind of like,
Spoken.
Yeah. It's not like you would sit there and go, oh, yeah, Nick Nolte. Well, I don't know. Some of the little mug shots and stuff he's taken, he's kind of looked a little bit like that guy. Yeah. But, I mean, it's just one of those things like, look, there's so many things that have been introduced in this thing, and I'm just glad that we finally got a trailer.
Yeah.
So when do you think that they're going to do another one?
Probably maybe end of September, beginning of October.
Yeah, I'm going to say probably the second week of October. Because actually, this is a little bit beyond a teaser trailer. This is like your first trailer. It was like a minute and a half or something. Mm-hmm. So I think that we're going to get now a 2.5-minute trailer, maybe around the second week of October.
Do you think in that one we'll see some of these other characters like Boba, Ahsoka?
Well, I think we have to, because I think that what you're doing is you're reestablishing the look and you're reestablishing a lot of the things. And this trailer was designed to get you excited. So I think that the next one is going to put a little bit more context into it.
Gotcha.
Because they have to do something with the story. But what about you guys? What do you think? Do you think that, I mean, first of all, did you like the trailer? Did it make you more excited, less excited? How'd you feel about it? What are some of your favorite scenes? Let us know in the comment section. Of course, you could still let us know in the chat because we're still rolling. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. So, if you guys think of something you want to say about The Mandalorian, it's totally cool. All right. What do we got next?
Next, we have Duel of the Fates. All right. So, this week, we are pitting in a duel. Who will win in a duel between General Grievous or Darth Maul?
Don't usually like to... It's so apples and oranges in a way. I'm going to say Maul all the way. And the reason for that is because unlike when Grievous was fighting Jedi, the Sith were pretty much really aggressive. They used the Force aggressively. And I think not only is Maul a better duelist, in my opinion, even though, don't get me wrong, Grievous would put up a fight, no doubt. But I just can't help but think that Maul would, maul him. And he would use the Force to do some pretty nasty things to him. And look, these guys aren't... This is one of the things I don't understand why the Jedi didn't do it. His whole little heart thing was exposed. Just use the Force to just crush it. Or use the Force to crush his entire armor. And that maybe the Jedi didn't want to do that because that was kind of an aggressive use of the Force, but Maul certainly would do it.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I think I would go with Maul as well. But the only thing is, if we're just talking strictly a duel, if we're just talking strictly like lightsaber duel, it'll be interesting. Simple because you would almost have to take the
Is it the multi-lightsaber thing that Grievous does?
Well, I mean, it's not just that, because Maul, I mean, he could, I mean, if Obi-Wan can do it, certainly Maul could, contest with it as well. I think it's more so like the fact that, like, all right, what makes him more lethal, in my opinion, is that he can use the lightsabers in different forms with different arms.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you have one form he could use like Sorensu, and then another form he can use, let's say the Vapid, or, in another form he could use. So he can, like, it's harder to keep track of, what's like, okay, which blade is doing what at what time. Whereas Maul kind of has a fixated style in a way. But the other thing that I would have to think of is, like, who trained them. And the reason why I gave the edge to Maul is because he was under the Emperor.
Yep. Whereas
Dooku trained Grievous. And Dooku was a phenomenal duelist, no doubt. But even then, I don't think he still could hold a full I don't know if he could beat, and that would be a good one, who went between Dooku and Maul.
I was going to say, that would be a great one.
I would love to see that one, especially if it's not dealing with anything with the Force. Just a straight up duel.
I mean, it would have to be, because if you introduce the Force into it, I mean, Dooku would just crush him.
Yeah.
Because not only was Dooku a Jedi, I mean, I guess we're doing it now.
Yep.
Not only was Dooku a Jedi, and he was trained by Yoda, then he was turned around and trained by the Emperor. It's like I think you brought this up in another episode at one point.
He was trained by two of the greatest.
Yeah, he was trained by the greatest of each side.
Yep.
And so he has this mastery of pretty much light side and dark side, and he's pretty powerful too. That's another thing. A lot of times people estimate. I remember when I did the show on my own, like a month or so ago, the Duel of the Fates on that one was who could beat Dooku.
Yeah. That's when you and Jason, I think, were going at it.
Yeah, and that actually, no. The Jason thing happened in the comments section. That was, once he started watching our show, he decided to go back and watch a bunch of our other episodes, like we encourage everybody to do. And yeah, he just started latching on to he would just comment on all the shows. And that was one of the shows. But actually, Ronaldo, I think, was one. And yeah, I think there was a couple of people that went back and forth on that. But there was a lot of, but yeah, Jason did do it retroactively through the comment section. And it was really interesting because Dooku's actually a lot more powerful than what people think.
Definitely.
And I think that the same thing applies to Maul in a way. It's like, yeah, if you pit him against somebody like Vader or whatever, of course he's going to lose. But the thing is that Maul, if you actually look, and now that we have Clone Wars, we have Rebels, we have Solo. Because remember, he's around the time he's the leader of Crimson Dawn, yeah. He had conquered Mandalore pretty much and was ruling that for a while. I mean, Maul's no slouch.
Well, the thing about Maul is, and that's deceptive about him, just like Grievous, they're both very masterful strategists. Like, they're pretty good. I mean, Maul's an assassin. I mean, at one point. He was kind of like almost like the Asajj Ventress before he ascended to the rank of Sith Lord.
Yeah, right. A lot of times I forget that too. But one of the things that you have to think about too that I really respect about Grievous that you don't really see in a lot of these guys is that Grievous knows when to run.
Yeah, he knows when to bail out.
Yeah, he knows when it's like, you know what, this isn't going well for me. And Dooku does too, because, when he wasn't able to best Yoda, he was kind of like, you know what, maybe live to fight another day.
Exactly. Ronaldo says, Grievous is really strong, but Maul is a lot more powerful. He was trained by Palpatine, and Grievous was trained by Dooku. Also, Maul is more agile than Grievous, who is a bit more rigid. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
I think Grievous is pretty agile for him because.
Again, well, you'd bend backwards and do that little spider thing that he does, and
little exorcist move down the steps.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's exactly what that reminds me of too, like his little exorcist move.
But then also, like, he had his feet too. Like he would like utilize those in battle, and the fact that he's made out of like this armor. It's like, that's gotta hurt, and getting hit by that crap. And you saw what happened when Obi-Wan tried to kick him, which was the dumbest thing in the world.
Well, the thing that I find really hilarious about the whole thing is that, Lucas likes to play things sometimes for laughs or have like kind of a lighter, because remember, he makes these movies for kids, but if you look at the way that Grievous is written in some of the books, and if you look at his overall thing, before we saw the whole stupid coughing thing, and it was almost like the concept of Grievous was more terrifying than the execution.
Yeah.
That he could have been much cooler, and I think he was intended. Like, if you actually just look at him in universe and not so much...
Well, he's freaky looking, number one.
He's freaky looking. The fact that he's wielding all these lightsabers, and like you said, he's able to do different fighting styles on each arm, and
he's killing master Jedis. It's not just Padawans or
right,
or just regular Jedi Knights. No, he's knocking off like masters.
Yeah, but what's interesting about it, and I don't think that I don't know because I haven't watched every Star Wars video on YouTube, but who's really actually thought about pitting him against a Sith? Because it's going to be different fighting a Sith.
True.
Than it is a Jedi. And yes, he's conquered all these Jedi.
Because Jedi have this kind of... It's almost kind of like Superman. Like Superman has the ability to do certain things, but he doesn't allow himself to do it because it's not really like it's all... For him, it's about justice.
Same with Batman. Batman's got that he's not going to kill anybody rule.
Right. But it's kind of like, when you have... the ability to, but like when you're like the Punisher though, see that's like the Sith,
Yeah.
Like when you're Frank Castle out here and you're just blowing everybody away, that's a whole different mindset.
Well, and I think that that's one of the things that's important to note too is the fact that it's really what's driving the fighting and what's driving the skill isn't so much okay how good of a duelist are they or how powerful in the Force are they. It's what are they willing to do to vanquish the enemy?
Right.
How far are they willing to go?
Yep.
The other thing that Jason had brought up when we were talking about the whole Dooku thing, which I really kind of opened my eyes on some things, is that there's the variable aspect too, because that's why he came up with the whole system of percentages. This person wins 70% of the time. Because there are certain scenarios which maybe the other person would win.
Yeah, Ronaldo says, by the way, if Grievous was the same one as the 2003 Clone Wars show, I think that version would destroy Maul.
Yeah, he's talking about the that little Japanese anime style, like 2-minute, 3-minute thing. Yeah, well, that's what I was talking about because that was really where we were introduced to Grievous. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to how the introduction of Boba Fett was actually the holiday special. Our first look and our first glimpse into Grievous was that weird 2 or 3 minute, which I loved, by the way. I thought that was like really cool. I mean, I love the Clone Wars series, but I really loved those little shorts. That was the one where like Yoda waves his hand and like pretty much vanquishes all these
like droids.
Yeah, droids and stuff. But he's right. If that was the version of Grievous that we had on film, which is why I have to say I was a little disappointed in Grievous when I saw him in Revenge of the Sith, because I was kind of expecting that. Mm-hmm. I wasn't expecting asthmatic Grievous. And it's not even so much that wasn't a cool thing. I mean, one of the things that I do like that George did in that is that he's giving these guys weaknesses. Mm-hmm. That they're not these all-powerful guys.
Yeah.
But you do kind of wonder, like, okay, does Palpatine have a problem when it comes to respiration? When he's outfitting these guys with stuff, is like, there's something is there glitches? Because you have Vader, then you have Grievous, and they just seem to have respiration problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think the healthiest one was Dooku, actually. He's the oldest. But
well, at least he was whole.
Yeah, that too. Even Maul ended up, half a man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think that Grievous, though, I think it's one of those things, like, I agree that you have to decide what are you willing to do. Like, I believe Obi-Wan and Anakin could have destroyed Grievous easily, honestly, but it's like they weren't willing to go or do what needed to be done in order to do that. They were all about, like, okay, let's capture Grievous, let's put him away, let's put him in jail, let him stand trial for his crimes, Well, Maul would just flat out just kill you. Like, I don't have time for the bureaucracy of everything. It's like, no, you're in my way.
Well,
you gotta die.
And that's the way the Sith operate. You know, it's like it's not about justice; it's about destruction. It's about it's
about power. It's about you
elimination.
Being in my way. Yeah, you're in my way. Get out.
Exactly. And so, consequently, there is going to be a difference in how they're dealing with these people, and that's a really good point. Is the fact that a lot of times the negative aspect, I mean, the positive aspect is that the Jedi are trustworthy, noble, on and on it goes. But the negative side is sometimes, because these other guys aren't, in their quest to pursue justice, it's almost like it goes against what they're really trying to ultimately do. You know, in the case of somebody like Grievous, it's like, maybe skip the trial for this guy.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like when we saw Anakin, like in the Clone Wars, where I remember he was trying to figure out who killed Obi-Wan, and he was really ticked off about it. So he was, dragging Ahsoka along with him, and he would pop it up in these bars, and he was trying to ask for questions. He was asking questions, and people were just kind of blowing him off until he started force choking them. And it's like, yeah, you're gonna tell me, and they're like, all right, yep, here it is. And it's like, you know what? See, if they would do more of that, they would get the results that they needed, but. You can understand from
or at least get them faster.
Yeah. But then you can understand from the Jedi perspective. It's like, well, that's too aggressive. Like,
yeah, it's almost like if we do that, now we're no better than they are.
Exactly.
And how could you trust us? And that's you have to look at it from the standpoint of the normal citizen. It's like you got these two like guys that are, have these immense powers, and it's like, well, who's going to police them? If you see them policing themselves.
Yeah, it's no different than how we're looking at society right now. Like, everybody's kind of having a different opinion of law enforcement right now just because of what's going on in the country. And, these are the people that we're supposed to call on when we need help, but then at the same time, they're the ones victimizing folks. So you're like, because they have this power and we don't have the means or we don't have the necessary means to really combat that. So I get it and that's kind of like how the Jedi are. Like, they have to police themselves and govern themselves in a way like, okay, well, no, we have to do things by the book, because if we don't, now how can we hold people to law and order?
Well, that's one of the reasons why Palpatine had to do things the way he did it, because it's like, well, how do you tarnish the reputation of these guys?
Exactly.
Because they're such do-gooders, and they had this code that it was like somehow Palpatine had to get around it, which, of course, he did brilliantly. But at the same time, it did, in a way, stop them from pursuing the ultimate thing. But, see, this is why Mace Windu, once again, I think he has that balance. Because, he's facing Palpatine. He's like, oh, no. There's not going to be any trial. There's not going to be any of this stuff. This guy is too, powerful and evil to live. So he's got to go. And it was Anakin, ironically enough, that was like, no...
he's got to stand. But see, I don't even think Anakin would. I think Anakin would have went along with it had he not had a motive.
Well, here's the thing and that's the thing. I agree, because if you think about it, as soon as he finds out he's a Sith Lord, Anakin immediately ignites his lightsaber. And I have to tell you, man, that was probably the most shocking moments to me of the entire Star Wars saga. I hope I remember that, because I'm sure one of these days, one of our topics is going to be 10 most shocking moments of the Star Wars saga. But that, not only was it the most shocking thing to me in Revenge of the Sith, but pretty much the entire saga. I can honestly say, now that I've seen all 9 of them, you can even throw Rogue One and Solo in there. Granted, seeing Darth Maul pop up at the end of Solo and he's the head of Crimson Dawn, didn't see that coming.
Right.
I'll give that a number 2. Number 1, though, is here's this guy that's been like a father who's guided him, who's, nurtured him. As soon as he finds out, oh, wait, you're a Sith Lord? Well, yeah, kind of. Boom, out comes the lightsaber. That was the last thing that I expected Anakin to do.
Well, it actually freaked me out. What was more shocking was the fact that Palpatine didn't flinch.
Yeah,
it's just kind of
that whole scene, man. That whole scene was just like.
Well, that was shout out to Ian McDermott, man, because his whole acting in that.
Yeah,
like the looks that he has as they were kind of like circling each other.
I know it was so
that tension was
it was,
crazy.
Man. It was
because
so
we know,
tense.
and we're like, when Anakin finally finds out, it's just like,
yeah,
okay,
because
now
you
what are you
always
gonna
wonder
do?
that. You
Yeah.
always wondered like the whole thing. Like, okay, this guy, okay, he was Anakin Skywalker. He's defending Palpatine as like this, guy that has the best interests of the people at heart. And then you flash forward, he's Darth Vader, and he's bowing to his emperor. So it's kind of like, okay, you know that somewhere in there, Anakin has to find out who Palpatine really is. And you always wondered, how's that going to go down?
Mm-hmm.
And they could not have done that more brilliantly because it's like you said, they're circling, you're just like tense. Anakin's drawing on him, which I never expected him to just draw his lightsaber on him.
Yeah.
And then Palpatine's not flinching, and Palpatine is still trying to, like, talk him in,
Yeah, he's all closing his eyes. I could feel your anger and all kind of crap.
just like...
And I'm just like, man, you're really comfortable because, you really are confident in your abilities. But, I just think that it's, with Anakin, I think his whole thing was that he knew that Palpatine, at the time, he thought Palpatine had the answers that he needed, and that's the reason why he saved him. Otherwise, I think Anakin would have just been like, oh, all right, well, we got to kill him.
Yep. Because, well, and that's the point, is that I think that he probably... Because at first, if you remember, though, when he drew on him, he was like, I'm going to arrest you, I'm going to take you in, that whole thing.
Right.
So I don't necessarily think that the justice part of it was simply because he needed him. And the part that where he needed him came in is that you wouldn't let Mace kill him.
Well, I think that's the reason. Like, so if you're going back to the original part when he, draws the lightsaber on him initially, the reason why he's going to take him in is, once again, it's like, okay, with him alive, I can still question him. I can still get my information.
Okay, yeah.
But then it's like,
that.
but so, okay, once he, it's like, okay, well, I got to report this to the council. And then, I'm sure in his head, because, you got to also remember, the Jedi sent Anakin to spy on him in the first place because they didn't trust him.
Yeah,
and Anakin had all these reservations about, like,
Yep.
I don't want to spy on him. He's my friend. He's my father figure. I just think this is wrong, especially the way the Jedi Code is set up. Like, why are we doing this? I feel like we're going against things. And even Anakin, Palpatine even says, like, oh, they sent you to spy on me, didn't you? Yeah, I know. It's like that whole thing. So it's like, but then for him to kind of flip the script, it's like, well, dang, the Jedi were right.
I know. That's what I was thinking. It's like, oh, man, you mean you actually are the Sith Lord?
Yeah, I was like, oh, crap. Now I gotta bring you in now. But it's like, of course, I got to bring you in. And, of course, there's an attachment to him, of course, because he doesn't necessarily want him to die because, of course, that's still his father figure. But at the same time, he knows he has this secret that
but the thing is,
can help him.
But you got to look at it from this standpoint, too. And this goes into, like, whether or not it'll kill him. Because if you think about it, Ventress, Dooku, if you think about him finding out, the emotion behind him finding out, this is the guy that's been plotting the whole thing. This is the guy that trained Dooku and put him up to this stuff, and Ventress and all these other people, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, it had to just kill him initially inside, that it's like, man, I really need to kill you because you're like the mastermind of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. The other reason why we have a whole war.
Right, but at the same time, we've had this relationship and you kind of helped me out, and it just has to be like, really crazy. So Ronaldo's got a couple of stuff that, we... Yeah,
Ronaldo says you can tell, well, before that, as you said, Maul could just kill them with the Force. If it was a fight without the Force, it would be very tight, but Maul has the best advantage. Mm-hmm. He also says you can tell Ian McDiarmid was having a lot of fun in Revenge of the Sith. Followed up by Dave Filoni said that if Mace killed Palpatine, he would have been arrested because even if he was a Sith Lord, he's still the Chancellor.
Yeah, and that's really what's interesting to me is how that all would have been down, because it is true, he still is the Chancellor. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, is there some sort of a thing that it's like if you're the Chancellor, but you also happen to be a Sith Lord, we have the right to kill you? Like, what are the laws governing this thing?
Well, my thing is, how do you prove it, though?
Well,
How do you prove it to the rest of the council?
yeah, because it's not like Palpatine's gonna, he's gonna pretend like I don't know what these guys are talking
They're
about.
crazy, right? But I mean, so you will almost have to have a surefire way to prove, because if you killed him, then it's just like, okay, well, now it seems as if the Jedi
Just
are trying to
take
take
out your
over.
cell phone and record the duel between Mace and Palpatine when he starts shooting lightning at him. That'll do it.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you could think about it. But once again, like, had Anakin not showed up, I mean, it would have just been Mace and Palpatine.
Well, they got a lot of tech.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like,
You know.
but
Well-
I mean, like, they're in his office, though.
Well, and that's the thing, because he actually stopped the recording or whatever, because he
Mm-hmm.
was like, it's treason then, and then he kind of stops, and then
Yeah,
he takes care of business.
Yeah,
and-
he hits the button under the table, and then he stands up. That's when lightsabers come out, and it's party time. But
Yeah, they would have to actually somehow prove it, no doubt, but I think that they could probably do that. I mean, I don't think it's something as simple as, okay, we have a vote of no confidence in Palpatine for
Well, I mean-
obvious reasons, but
well, I also think that I mean, that's one of the things about your reputation, though. It's like, as the Jedi, it's like, all right, they have these special abilities, they have this, and they're so noble that it's kind of like, okay, well, you have to almost like give them the benefit of the doubt, and they would know a Sith Lord if, but
right,
but
because all they'd have to do is be like to the council, like, okay, raise your hand if you've ever seen a Sith Lord. Of course, they'd be like, well, what Sith Lords have you seen? But they've seen some, Maul, Dooku.
yeah, but see, even then though, they didn't know, like, Maul. No one was really aware of Maul like that. No one was really aware that Dooku was a Sith Lord. They knew him as a political idealist, but they didn't know him as a Sith Lord.
Well, that's one of the genius things about the Sith was the fact that they kept their identity so secret, which, by the way, is why I had such a big issue with the Rise of Skywalker, and everybody's throwing Sith around like it's some common thing.
Well, that's
Because now you're making the point that I've been trying to make for all these things. It's like nobody even knew any of these people were Sith Lords, and then, even Palpatine was all like, oh, yeah, look at what they did to me.
and yeah, and so when you look at even the Sith, like, and of course they have been believed to be extinct for millennia.
Right, which
So,
makes
like,
you wonder.
So no one has even seen a Sith Lord or even heard of one.
Well, my point has always been like this. If you can forget the Jedi even existed in 30 years, then yeah, a millennia is kind of a long time. It's almost
Exactly.
like nobody should even have heard of the Sith.
Exactly. Besides the fact that they're a race.
Yeah,
But
that did still exist. So that
Right,
part's
exactly.
true, yeah.
so to that point, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that's why, Palpatine kind of had, that's what I'm saying. It would have been kind of weird, because if the Jedi just all of a sudden killed Palpatine, the Jedi would have to justify that. Like, okay, well, he was this evil Sith Lord. And then, first of all, they were like, okay, well, what the heck is a Sith Lord? And they're like, oh, well,
Right, like back up.
Okay.
What's a Sith Lord?
and then it's like, use your words.
Why did you kill, the leader of the galaxy?
Exactly. And so then you would have to explain, okay, well, how we're like the peacekeepers and everything, like they're the evil version of us, basically.
You're right. Yeah, that's basically what they
You
would
know.
have to.
And then they're like, okay, so Palpatine is a Sith Lord. Okay, so where did that come from? And how do you show us where he went wrong? You can't, there's nothing, unless he's got documents or something laying around. Everyone's pretty much dead at this point. Dooku's dead, Maul's dead. That's why the good thing is only two of them. But the only people you could probably find out information from would be his aides. So they knew.
Yeah, like Masamita.
Yeah, Masamita knew. But, so unless you can crack him, otherwise, like, what possible grounds do you have to kill the Chancellor?
Well,
And that's
that
why
would
he
be-
always acted like, oh, Master Jedi. And it's like, yeah, they're always, he's always acting, well, thank you, Master Jedi, for helping. He's always looking out for you guys. Anakin was one of, so you mean to tell me this guy all of a sudden, what I'm saying? Like, that would be very hard to prove.
Right. So this feeble old dude you're telling me just took out like 3 Jedi Masters and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, that's true. I mean, that's one of the things. That was the brilliance of his plan.
Yeah, Palpatine was like, that's what I'm saying. Like when you really stop and watch and literally look at all the stuff that he did.
Well,
I mean,
it goes
guy's
back
just,
to the
like,
what was that
brilliant.
show we did with that was about that basically. Trying to remember what we actually called it. It was like how powerful Palpatine really
or
was.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like one of the things that everybody underestimates. And this is what truly made him powerful. I mean, beyond the fact that he was just insanely powerful in the Force, when you really stop and think what he pulled off as a strategist,
Yeah, man. I mean,
it's insane.
you want to stand up and tip your hat and clap like with a round of applause for him, man. 'cause
Yeah,
it's like,
I mean, this guy really.
you had it.
I mean, it's one of those things that right there is power,
Mm-hmm.
and
True
he
power.
was able to pull it off.
Mm-hmm. And no one expected otherwise. I mean, that was brilliant.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I think that it was really cool that even if you go back to the old expanded universe, which is now Legends, you basically have that whole Yuuzhan Vong series.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were conquering everybody, and then finally the Empire gets involved, I really wish that they would take that and make that canon. I mean, they can't do it just flat out because, Han Solo's dead now, and Chewbacca didn't get killed by a moon, and these kind of things. But they could take the basic storyline and then align it with the new canon. But one of the things that I thought was cool about that was they did this whole little thing where the Empire was kind of staying out of it. Their whole thing was like, okay, well, we're basically in the unknown regions now. Or, no, they were in the Outer Rim. So they were basically reduced to the Outer Rim. The Republic let them exist as the Empire, but they had to more or less confine themselves to the Outer Rim. And they had like a treaty. And Paleon, who was Thrawn's right-hand man, when Thrawn was killed, Paleon became the Grand Admiral. And he and Leia were kind of like friends. So they sort of had like a cool relationship. So they were kind of cool with each other, even though they were sort of on opposite sides. They recognized that politically they were opponents, but they liked and respected each other. So essentially, when the Yuuzhan Vong were attacking and they were just taking system after system after system, the Empire was basically staying out of it like, well, that's you guys' problem. Mm-hmm. We're fine. But then they started going after the Empire, too. So the Empire realized that, like, Leia was trying to say, like, listen, you think that they're going to stop? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to be one of those things where...
You're next.
Yeah, you're going to be next. So they ended up forming kind of like an uneasy alliance. It's like, all right, well, we're going to help you guys, but, after that, we're done. Now we come to the point that I'm trying to make. So, essentially, one of the things that happened when the Empire just started getting their butts handed to them by the Yuuzhan Vong, worse than they'd ever experienced before. They're like, crap, we thought the rebels were bad? This is, like, insane. And you had these guys that were just like, well, if Palpatine were still around, then, you'd see some, like, then things would be a little bit different. And that's because that's the point. It's like everybody just figured, like, he would end up knowing what to do. And it was funny because they kept bringing this up in all the books. Like, the Empire guys kept saying, oh, man, if Palpatine were still around.
At least Vader.
Or something. And it was kind of like one of those things that I started thinking about. Like, wow, what would Palpatine do against these guys? Because Force, his abilities wouldn't work. I mean, maybe Force lightning could do something to them. I don't know. But it would have been really interesting to see, how that would have worked.
Yeah, Ronaldo has a question. I mean, not a question, but a statement. He says, Palpatine had more patience than the Jedi. He had to wait many years so that his plan worked. And you can say the same thing in the prequels. I mean, in the sequels.
Yeah, you can now.
Yeah.
Now that he's back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, patience is not really something that is a Sith trait.
Yeah.
That's more of like a Jedi thing. You could actually make the argument that he was more patient than any Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of these Jedi are just like, okay, we got to do this or whatever. And it's kind of like, here's this guy who had enormous amounts of patience. He also seemed to have a lot of contingency plans.
Yeah. When things didn't go right.
He just rolled with it, man. Yep. And it was almost like shark teeth. A shark loses a tooth and another one pops right back in place. And that's how this guy was. I mean, you never saw anything like it. It's like, and these aren't just small failures.
Yeah.
Like, say, the first Death Star blows up. Kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
But yet, this guy just has, like, another plan. Mm-hmm. Roll out the next one.
Yep. It's already almost done anyway.
I mean, it's great. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, you got to hand it to this guy. And he has, he loses an apprentice, gets another one.
Yep. Already got one waiting in the wing.
Yeah, he's kind of like the way, a lot of guys line up girls.
Yeah, man. He's like...
Kind of like, okay, when one relationship is ending...
The new one is already...
they're grooming the new one already, So you gotta hand it to this guy. I don't know. I think that it's really interesting when you look at just the way the Sith and everything operates, the dynamic involved in that.
Yeah.
Because another thing that you have to look at is that Dooku, Grievous, if you go into... I don't know if they canonized Mara Jade yet or not. I know she hasn't been in anything, but I'm not sure if, Disney did a whole thing like, oh, yeah, she's canon now or something. But it's just interesting how he has all these powerful people sort of working together, under him, obviously. Mm-hmm. You could throw Thrawn in there, too. And nobody is really doing a power struggle among those guys. There are power struggles. Like, who are those idiots that try to go up against Vader in the comics? It may have been some of the Inquisitors. There was like some guys that thought that they were going to get on the Emperor's good side, and they decided to ambush Vader. Yeah, it did not go well. And it's kind of like... Well, it's funny because I actually got the new Vader comic a couple of days ago. I haven't read it yet, but I was reading something about it where Vader feels Palpatine's wrath again, and they show him, like, encased in lightning and stuff, and I'm, like, kind of wondering where that's going. Because actually I got that, and I got another Star Wars. I think the main storyline of Star Wars. Mm-hmm. So that one came. So I got to read that, too. And then, of course, I have that Thrawn book that I'm nowhere near ready to start. And eventually we got to get your report on
yes,
Queen's Peril?
Queen's Peril.
Yeah. Because Shadow was the first one, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Aren't they supposed to do a third one on that?
I think there is a third one already.
Oh, yeah. Of course, I don't remember the title.
Yeah, it's already out, I believe.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, I think it is out. I mean, that actually sounds like a really good series.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Palpatine figures a little bit into those books, right?
Well, I know there's a callback because Vader goes back and sees, and he runs into some of the handmaidens on Naboo.
Yeah, there is a callback. That's part of the comic series I'm reading.
Yeah.
That's like the new Vader comics.
Yeah.
That he decided that he's going to go and find out.
I think he wanted to visit her tomb or something like that.
Well, he was trying to find out, for a while he was trying to find out the whole thing about Luke, like why he didn't really know. He wants to go, like anybody that hid the information from him or whatever, he goes to kill him. Then he starts getting put on, for some reason, the whole Padme thing. And the handmaidens ended up luring him there to ambush him because they think that Vader killed not only Padme, but Anakin too. And of course, Vader was trying to... So it actually makes this comic really interesting because it's kind of like, because they're connected to Padme and because he knew them, he's trying not to kill them. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like, okay, they would shoot at him, he'd be, blocking all this, like, hey, don't do that. Stop.
No.
Stop trying to kill me. All right? This is not gonna, because it's like,
gonna end the way we
it's Captain Typho and Dorme and all them. So, and these are like some main characters that we know, and he's trying to be like, okay, listen.
I get it, but Listen.
But just, then they finally do stuff, and he'll force choke him, but let him go and stuff like that. But he's still, he's trying not to kill them. I don't remember if he ended up killing them or not, from the last issue. I'll have to, reread some of this stuff and brush back up. But it's all interesting how you get all this interconnective stuff that's shining a lot of light on the prequels.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we're going to get to the prequels a little bit later in the show too, but I think that it's something that really shows the scope of Palpatine's plan in a way that we really don't fully appreciate in the movies. And this is one of the things that I talk about all the time with all the canon material that's been coming out, whether it's the books or the comics or, a tie-in series or something, is that it enriches.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, once I realized how in-depth Palpatine's plan was, and you just, you really, really don't get a true appreciation of it until you watch the Clone Wars animation.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because when you're seeing all the different missions that he's sending, whether it's Dooku on, all right, I need you to wipe out this person, and then Dooku sends, Ventress or Savage or Press to do something, or, maybe it's a Grievous mission. All right, Grievous, I need you to go over here and take care of this. Oh, you failed? Okay, don't fail me again, and blah, 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 blah. And then he's still got to deal with Anakin. He's still got to deal, his multitasking ability is amazing. And then on top of that, just enabled to keep everything straight. And then there's even the rare occasions where he wants to deal with some things personally. Like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to send anybody. No, I sense Maul is still here. I'm going to go get him. Because I know I'll get it done. And, and it's just wow. You're just really watching how he's trying to, with the banking clan and how he's doing certain things with there and how he's, trying to defund certain stuff. And, well, Master Jedi, we haven't heard about this. And is there a reason for this? So just sowing those little seeds of discord.
Yeah, right. It's
Yeah,
quit
exactly.
playing.
Exactly. Or he acts like, all right, all right, you capture me. Or, he'll say, all right, capture, the Chancellor. And half the time, the guys, Grievous, don't even know they're capturing their own master. And it's just no, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. Even with Maul was like, man, I had, when he gets the revelations, my master, I had no idea that he was even doing this.
Yeah, right. He's just I was so stupid.
Yeah, he was just I could see it now, but, so it's just amazing at the lengths Palpatine went through just to make the little or the most simplest thing happen. Even just not allowing the Jedi to feel the Force around him, doing that on a consistent basis while still trying to manage everything. I mean, the man thought literally about everything.
Oh yeah, I mean it's one of those things that you really get a deep appreciation for it, and it's like you said. You don't necessarily need to read all these extra things or whatever to appreciate the movies, but if you do,
yeah,
it really enriches. Because another thing, speaking of the Clone Wars, there's a particular episode where that one monster thing that, they wanted to keep in captivity, but Palpatine kept saying to kill it, and then it ends up hating him and constantly trying to kill him.
Yeah.
The thing that always amazes me, and there's been a couple of episodes like this, and you can even say the beginning of Revenge of the Sith was like this.
Oh, I know what you're going with.
Yeah, he could totally take care of this thing.
Yep.
But he has to pretend to be all weak and feeble, and he gets himself into trouble. And there's been a couple of times, especially that one particular episode, where you're like, dude, you're taking some risks.
Yeah.
I mean, you might want to deal with this because these other guys aren't getting the job done. And, his life was actually in danger a couple of times. And it always made me wonder, how far would he go to protect his identity?
Yeah.
Because at some point, what if the Jedi couldn't protect him? What if, he was in a situation where it's almost like, okay, I've got to show my powers.
Mm-hmm. How would you do it?
Yeah, and how would he do it?
Yeah.
There's
just like that. Actually, that one. Was that one episode where he was captured, and I remember there was I think they released some fog or some steam happened in the room, and then that's when he kind of took it as an advantage. Okay, no one can see me. And he just started decimating everybody. And everyone was wondering, like, well, how did you get out of that? And he's like, oh, well, luck of the job or something like that. But it's just like, that's when he kind of like realized, okay, no one can see. Cool. And just decimated everybody. And then went back, almost like a Yoda type thing, like flipping around all over the place. And then all of a sudden you pick up your cane. Oh, yeah, thank you for helping me out. I really appreciate it. They're like, oh, my God, really? But
yeah, it's just amazing how, that works because
it's the whole drunken master thing.
Yeah, but the thing is, you would think that this guy would be, just in some of the stuff that we've seen him in, it's like how he was able to keep all that under wraps and not fall to the temptation, knowing he could easily defeat, and he has to watch these guys like struggle with it when he could just be like, okay, look, I could just do this. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he would endanger, you would fall or something, and it's like, man, you're going to fall and potentially like break a bone or something because, but again, it just shows the restraint and everything that he had, that he would resist the temptation to just, or, if somebody got in his face or whatever, and it's just like, dude, you have no idea who you're talking to right now.
And the fact that it's like, temptation is like one of his greatest assets.
Yeah.
Like, for him to resist his own self, but he's like the master tempter, though. It's kind of like,
I know, it's just one of those things that it's when you really stop and think about these things, you get a deeper appreciation for it. But what do you guys think would win between Grievous and Maul? I mean, whoa, what a
slippery slope that was.
Yeah, that was that was pretty crazy.
But hey.
But that was it, man. These are the kinds of discussions that I think really drive the show. And if you guys are liking this, certainly hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. Look, we got a link for donating. So, we could get some money so we can actually keep putting this show on for you guys. Because we love to do this. And we get in some really good discussions. The chats are really on fire tonight. So that's great. So what do we got next?
Next, we're going to the Cantina.
Yeah, we're going to the Cantina, man. I've been hitting on this Spindrift carbonated water thing all night. But you know what? Let's go get some more drinks.
Yeah, need some little strong.
Okay, so what do we got first in the Cantina?
All right.
I'm thirsty.
Well, my friend, we have some issues with The Mandalorian.
Yeah, we said that we were going to get to this a little later. Now, this is kind of interesting to me because I know that they've been saying that, so Pedro Pascal, for some reason, didn't like being in the suit or something. He wanted more scenes with his helmet off or whatever. Mm-hmm. And pretty much Favreau and Filoni, they kind of got into a little tiff, I guess you could say.
Yep.
He basically is told to leave this. He's told to leave the set in the middle of it. Now, my whole thing is this. Even though it would be kind of a loss, let's try to remember before we get too carried away with this. Number one, this could have just been like an on-set fight or whatever, and cooler heads prevailed and everything's fine. But secondly, let's remember that for like 80% of season 1, it wasn't even Pedro in the suit. Mm-hmm. It was just his voice.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not discounting the importance of his voice acting in this or the times that he was in the suit. But I gotta say, I think that if he ends up quitting for some reason, the show's gonna be fine.
Yeah. I think so too. It's not like his character, or his, I won't say his character. His character is very vital, of course, because it's called The Mandalorian. But I mean, I think him playing this character, it could almost be played by almost anybody.
Yeah. And in this case, you just get somebody that kind of looks and sounds like him, and he'd be fine.
Yeah, and you could do a lot of things with audio things now, and you can.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, like I said, 90% or 80% of it is like, a stunt double anyway, doing all this.
Yeah,
stunt movements. And
I remember it was a really big deal. It was toward the end of the season. They made this big thing, like, you know what? He wasn't even in the suit half the time. Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, what are you complaining about?
Yeah. Exactly.
It's kind of like, dude, it was like, well, I want more scenes with my helmet off. It's like, you're the Mandalorian. I mean, you kind of knew what you were getting involved in when you signed up for this thing. It's like,
kind of the point.
yeah, you're the whole Mandalorian armor. Did you not understand this when you signed the contract? Did you somehow think that this was? I mean, that's stupid.
Like a mild recommendation.
Yeah, that'd be like David Prowse saying, "I want more, mask off time or something." It's like, you got your little, hyperbaric chamber scene or whatever, it's like, it just amazes me sometimes that these people like get knotted up and twisted up and all this stuff. And of course, in the most successful Star Wars thing that's been since Disney took over, because you can, I mean, don't get me wrong. A lot of the stuff in Star Wars has been successful. But what I mean is, that's been financially. What I mean is among the fans. The fans love The Mandalorian. The last time we had some of this universal fan love really was probably Rogue One.
Yeah.
Everybody pretty much liked Rogue One. But The Mandalorian, everybody's loving it. Critics are loving it.
It's actually won some awards officially.
Yeah, it officially won some awards. It was nominated for like a truckload of them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, really? You want to mess this up because you want more helmet off time?
Yeah, maybe he wants to show off himself and let people know that he's really him, or I don't know.
I mean, you had to know what you were signing up for. I mean, you had to. It's The Mandalorian.
It's April.
I mean, it's just one of those things that I can't understand why this is a thing. At first, I thought that this was a false rumor, but it's been gaining some steam. And I mean, there's more and more people that are reporting this.
Well, the other thing is too that I've been hearing is that, the story of the Mandalorian is actually starting to get away from the actual character.
Yeah, well, that was another thing that I was going to address. Is that the thing you were going to talk about?
Yep.
Okay.
That was the thing I was going to talk about.
Yeah, I was thinking about addressing that earlier, too, when we were talking about the trailer, but it's like...
Yeah.
It fits more into this when you're saying that there's some set trouble and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. First of all, you had the rumor that they're using an episode to launch the Ahsoka series, and that she may only be in that. But regardless if she's in one episode or, like, multiple episodes... It stands to reason when you actually hear all of these characters that are being introduced. It's like, oh, well, it's getting away from the Mandalorian. Well, duh. You're introducing like 7 or 8 new characters, like prominent characters.
Yeah.
I mean, not only are you introducing new characters, we're talking like Ahsoka, Sabine.
Yeah.
These are not small roles here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question becomes, do we think that this is a mistake or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem. I mean, I guess, like I said, it all depends. It depends on the story. Like I said, it just depends.
Yeah, we always seem to go back there, don't we?
Because I mean, I think that's just always going to be the heart of it, and I think, we see something that features like it started off about the Mandalorian, but what is his role? I guess as a character, like, are we supposed to follow him on his journey, or is he supposed to lead us to other people's journey?
Yeah, almost like he's kind of the guide, like we're meeting these other people. You know what it's sort of like?
Right.
It's sort of like the Wizard of Oz to me. We start out focused on Dorothy, but as we're going down that yellow brick road, now we're introduced to the Scarecrow, so there's 2 of them, then the Tin Man, then, the Cowardly Lion, and it's pretty soon it becomes... I mean, I guess she does remain the focal point of the story, but I mean, still, it's that kind of thing where it's almost like the Mandalorian could be taking us on a journey, and it's through him that we meet other people.
Exactly.
Where it takes some of the focus off.
Ronaldo says the one thing that it's kind of weird is that if you check his Twitter, he has been posting some Mandalorian images. Why would he do that if he's out of the show? Contract.
Yeah. One, it would be
paid.
It would be contract. 2, it would be if he's got to go on and jump on a bunch of other projects, he's going to want to make sure that everybody knows that he was in The Mandalorian.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the biggest things, like I said, about the whole, and that's, we talked about how much faith we have in Filoni and Favreau, and I would just hate for something like, okay, well, maybe we spoke too soon. You don't want to get your hopes up and something goes south, and then now the Mandalorian is screwed up, and it's like, oh, here's another thing from Star Wars again.
But I don't think it's necessarily Filoni and Favreau. I mean, if you think about it, it's like he's just tweaked out about the fact that he doesn't have as many helmet off scenes.
No, I mean, I'm just talking about in general. We're talking about set issues or like the story, like we said about. Is the story going to stay with the Mandalorian that everybody perceived?
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
If
we start hearing a bunch of different things now, they're like, okay, great. Now they're screwing up the Mandalorian, the one show that we love, besides Rogue One. It's like, okay, what the heck are they doing over at Star Wars, or Lucasfilm?
I know. It's like, why can't people just get this right?
Yeah.
Like, really? But here's another thing too, and this goes to Ronaldo's point a little bit, is that remember. John Boyega was all Star Wars this, Star Wars is great, blah, 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 while everything was being promoted.
Right. It wasn't.
As soon as a couple of months go by and, you're not promoting the film anymore, we're getting a little bit of a different vibe now from him.
Well, yeah, especially after the attacks, I guess, that the sequels have been under. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I guess that's a little bit of a... I mean, he was probably a powder. He's probably been wanting to say all this crap since, episode 7, but he had to wait. But my point is, if you're wondering why Pedro is, still waving the Mandalorian flag, don't forget that Oscar Isaac and John Boyega and all these guys that have notoriously have had issues with Lucasfilm or Disney or Star Wars in general... You didn't hear about that until the promotion cycle was over.
Yeah, well, because you're still a professional.
Exactly.
At the end of the day,
have a job. Yep, you have a job to do. You created this thing. You want it to succeed.
And that's the problem, because if you start bad mouthing while the project is still underway, now what happens is it's like now other directors and other properties don't want to hire you.
Yeah, they're not going to hire you. They're like, this guy's insane. He's going to sabotage his own
career, and no one wants to hire him after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like you, though, I really hope that either this is overblown or maybe it isn't, but, enough time goes by, things successful, it's like, it's time for season 3.
Yeah.
That's another thing, too. We don't know how long he's been under contract for, too. Is he renewing year by year? Is he signed on for how many ever seasons they do?
Yeah. I mean, that's a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what they should do is, you have a scene where a guy's walking in and it's John Kreese. And he's taking over,
Yep.
I mean, it's just one of those things that I cannot believe that there's actually problems on this set when you look and everybody seems so happy about it, This actually seemed to be one of the group of actors that you really got a good vibe. Like, you really felt like these guys genuinely enjoyed working together.
Yeah, especially after you watch the galley thing,
right.
It's like, you're hearing all the actors.
Time, yeah.
They're like, man, yeah, this is great, and I got a chance to work with you, and I never got that, and
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much goodwill, and it's like, what happened between that and the other? And is it really? I mean, is there something deeper going on? Is it really about, hey, you're not showing me without the helmet on too much? I mean, that does sound like one of those, creative differences lines, or, like maybe there's a salary dispute now that the thing's like winning awards and all this. Are you still paying me like $1,000 a week, or you know what I mean? It's like,
right?
Is it? Because usually that's what it comes down to. It's usually either a money thing, or it's well, in the case of like this, it's prominent. It's like, I want people to know that I'm the star of this thing.
Right, and the fact that I'm in a helmet all the time, no one gets to see me. And no one gets to see me act because I'm in the suit all the time.
And maybe it did trip him out that 80% of the time he wasn't even in the suit. Now,
yeah, especially if, like I said, he's winning all these awards. He may not be, but he's not winning like best actor or because
right. Yeah, it's like mostly like best editing or something like that. But I mean, the point though is that maybe he was the whole official story for the first season was that he was shooting something else. I don't remember what it was, but he was on set. It was like either a play or something. It was something to where he was actually unavailable most of the time. But they really wanted him to do it, which, again, is really kind of surprising to me because it's like, you can get anybody to do this.
Right.
You know, why? It's almost like that whole Vin Diesel has to play Groot. What?
Right.
Why?
Exactly.
And you're making $20 million to do it? Really?
Just to say you did it.
You're paying a guy $20 million to say, I am Groot.
You pay somebody $20 to say that, and they'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
I
like
would
the
have
fact
done
that-
it for free.
Yeah, just say their name is in the credits.
Yeah, give me $20 million to say I am Groot. I will put every ounce of effort into that. I mean, it will be Oscar-winning stuff here.
Ronaldo says, I think that if this is real, there can be changes, but if Favreau and Filoni would not change their plan, if Filoni and Favreau would not change their plan, maybe change some things a little bit, but at least the overall story is still solid.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I mean, honestly, I think that The Mandalorian is one of those shows that even if Pedro Pascal just says, you know what, I'm done with this, I'm out, I think it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
You know, this is almost like, this isn't even, well, it is, but it isn't, because it hasn't been established enough. For instance, a lot of times people said that you can replace David Prowse. But that's not necessarily true because Prowse, in his physicality, defined Darth Vader. You can tell when these other people are in the suit, it's not the same.
Yeah, it's the acting that you have to do within that, and the just the walk, the pacing of how you walk, how you turn your body language. You have to emote a lot with body language. And David Prowse did that perfectly.
Yeah, now here's where I think that it's different from this. It's because in season 1, which is the very first, establishing thing on this, it's like 80% of the time it's not even Pedro Pascal. It's like, we'll just get the dude that was in season 1 and we'll be fine, and then just get somebody else to do the voiceover and sound like him.
No, now you tell me James Earl Jones has a problem, then that's different.
Yeah, but even then, look at how many games and stuff like that have and it sounds enough like Vader that you're good with it. I mean, there was one guy, I don't remember what game or whatever, it was something that I heard where I was like, dude, that's the guy they need to get, because that guy sounds like a younger James Earl Jones, like dead on. Like if you weren't paying attention, you would have sworn it was him.
Gotcha.
So it was one of those things where I was just like, man, because he's getting up there.
Yeah.
He's not going to be around forever. And even then, it's kind of like, it's hilarious. You have these things that take place, like Rogue One takes place before episode 4, but he sounds all old and feeble. And yeah, sure, you can do the whole, the voice box wasn't really working right, and they fixed it by A New Hope. But it's like, but A New Hope happened like immediately after, pretty much.
Well, I mean, even A New Hope, though, I mean, like, his voice didn't sound right. I mean, it wasn't... Honestly, like...
It was Empire.
Yeah, Empire was really...
Empire was when Vader was Vader.
Yeah.
With the voice and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's
yeah.
like, Commander, tear the ship apart. And
I know.
Like,
it was
hated,
yeah, it was weird.
But then, like, when you get to Empire and it's like, nah. That's Vader.
Yeah, I always kind of weirded out, too, like, in A New Hope, how his voice was... There's something wrong with it. It was like the way he recorded it or something.
Well, it's like the way it sounded when they were on the actual...
Yeah, the Star Destroyer. Like the whole introduction, right?
Yeah, the whole introduction, he sounded weird. But then by the time I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Yeah, that's
by
true.
that point,
yeah,
it kind of sounds better. It's like they need to, I don't know, clean up the audio or something.
Yeah, that's true. Because even when he was facing, when I left you, I was but a learner, but now I am the master. And that sounds like Vader. I mean, it just... But it was a lot more ominous still, though. In
Empire.
Yeah. It was just kind of like, okay, that's what we...
Yeah, we'll get to our Vader moments.
Yeah, this is the guy.
Yeah.
But for Pedro, it's like he wasn't even in the... Now, granted, he did the voice and all that, but it's like, I don't know. I just don't think it would affect that much if he pretty much wasn't in it anymore. Because the important thing is the characterization of him. And the story and all this other stuff.
Yeah, Exactly.
And he's in a suit the whole time.
And it's really the acting of everyone else around him that
Yeah.
makes, like, the Grief Karga or the, Cara Dune, saying, like, and of course, there's the animatronics of Baby Yoda and just that whole, everybody else acting around the Mandalorian really.
Yeah, but again, I don't necessarily want to totally discount it because he does in his. That's one of the things that I had said before when we found out that he wasn't even in the suit, but maybe in a couple episodes, a couple of scenes of a couple episodes, is that it's his voice acting that's really vital for that show.
True, but I mean, but see, even with his voice though, it's kind of like it never really changes. You really don't get a whole lot of different inflections with his voice.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like very even cool and, I was going to do an impression, but never mind.
Yeah,
But,
exactly. It's
yeah.
like, the kid has to come with me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like a chill version of Batman.
Yeah, exactly. If Batman smoked weed, that's what do we get from the Mandalorian.
Yeah, just get Christian Bale to do it.
Right, exactly.
I don't know why you're betraying me. It's kind of like, dude, I'll go take a stab at it.
I mean, you sound just like,
let me do it.
20 million.
Exactly. Well, I don't think it's quite that much. I mean, it's not Groot now,
Well, hey.
but whatever. All right, but what do you guys think? I mean, do you guys think, number one, is the Mandalorian in trouble? I mean, do you think that, first of all, do you even think that these things are true? Or do you think this is another thing to where, bloggers and people like that are just blowing this out of proportion? If it is true, do you think that they should replace him? Or I should say, if they do replace him, do you think it'll affect the show? But even say, like, yeah, should they replace, like, look, if he's going to start
Crying.
crying and stuff about stuff like this, do you really want to even keep this guy around? Let us know in the comment section or, chat live. We're going to be here for a little while, so it's okay. All right, what do we got next?
Next, we're talking about the prequels. So, fans are showing love to the prequels again. And it's really surprising people, especially Ewan McGregor.
Yeah, which I find actually funny. Because, of course, Ewan McGregor is one of the ones that everybody loved. That was one element of the prequels that even from the beginning, everybody loved him.
He did a masterful job playing Obi-Wan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny because...
At all three stages, too. Like, being a Padawan, the Jedi, and then the Master. Like, you
saw the growth.
You saw the growth in him.
I mean, here's the thing that's funny. When Phantom Menace was about to come on, you found out, okay, they're going to have a young Obi-Wan. It's this guy, Ewan McGregor. And you're just like,
okay,
oh, man, but it's not Alec Guinness, It's like...
Yeah.
But what's funny now is Ewan McGregor is Obi-Wan. Like, he basically took that character from him. Like, he's the one now that you think of when you think of Obi-Wan.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is mind-blowing.
Yeah, because, I mean, you only got Alec Guinness. I mean, granted, he popped up in every movie as far as the original trilogy, but you didn't really get a true acting performance for him, for too long. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, I would say A New Hope you did.
A New Hope you did, but...
And maybe more so in...
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, Return of the Jedi. I think that those are the two where he really...
Yeah, when he sat on the log and...
And he did establish... I mean, look, nobody's going to take any away from Alec Guinness. I mean, he established Obi-Wan as a character. He basically defined the character. But it was really, like you said, Ewan McGregor that took him...
And gave him more life, though.
Gave him more life. I would even argue that then of course there's a dude that basically imitates McGregor on the Clone Wars. Because you get a lot of development of Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars.
Definitely.
So I think between those two, but again, that's based on McGregor's performance, though.
Yeah, definitely. Even the look, too. The look and just everything. I mean, I just think that Ewan McGregor brought a lot of depth to that character. With Obi-Wan, when we see him in A New Hope, he's kind of like, all right, he's the old man. He's kind of that father figure. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, you can be a Jedi, too, if you come with me to Alderaan. And,
And totally grooming him.
Exactly. It's like...
Hey there, muscly arm. He's still the funniest. thing.
Yeah, man. So I mean, you could, but like when you really see the character of Obi-Wan, like it's really shown through Ewan McGregor though,
Yeah.
because you see you see how you get to Alec Guinness. You know, you kind of see how like, all right, the Padawan who was so staunch about, you know, following the book and going by the code and his master, and then you see him trying to teach Anakin and try to keep him in line, and then you see the development. It's like, okay, you know, I can let this guy have the reins a little bit. I'm still guide him, but you know, now it's just kind of like, all right, well, he's doing his thing, I kind of do mine, and as long as he's not going too crazy, you know, we're good. And he kind of like, you know, trusted Anakin a lot to do a lot of different things. But then, like, you know, you kind of understand, like, okay, given the sequence of events, why Alec Guinness had to be that way with Luke, as far as like not telling him everything, because so much was writing on it because of everything that happened beforehand. You get it.
Well,
now.
and again, I mean, I think that Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan was more the aftermath. It was more,
Yeah.
you know, this is what ended up being, and Ewan McGregor ended up establishing all these things, I think. And it was more of a pivotal time, because if you think about it, it's like you said, he's a Padawan, and he's dealing with the challenges of being a student, especially when he has a master. Now, of course, we learn more about that in Master and Apprentice, but even in The Phantom Menace, you get the sense of Obi-Wan's got a different way of doing things.
Yep.
And he doesn't always agree with his master, but he's the student.
Yeah.
So it's not really his place to question him, which is why I think that Obi-Wan gets so tweaked out at Anakin, you know, and so you will learn your place, young one, and like that. It's like, listen, you know, I didn't agree with Qui-Gon either, but you didn't see me going off and, you know, questioning him every 5 minutes. And I think that Obi-Wan sort of resented that with Anakin, but at the same time, they develop like a brotherhood
Yeah.
that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan didn't really, like, Anakin and Obi-Wan were really friends and like brothers.
Yeah.
And so there was a certain, I think because of that dynamic and because of the relationship, I think he was willing to pretty much put up with some of Anakin's, you know, it's kind of like, oh, it's an Anakin thing.
Well, yeah,
You know?
and especially you had to look at the way they grew up. See, when you look at like Ewan McGregor, well, not Ewan McGregor, but if you look at Obi-Wan Kenobi in Phantom Menace, look at his age. He's probably like around, what, maybe
19.
19 years old?
Yeah, he's 19.
Okay, so he's 19 years old. You know, Qui-Gon Jinn is like in his 40s,
Yeah.
probably mid-40s. So there's a huge gap. So, of course, you're going to look at Qui-Gon as a father figure.
Yeah, that's true. There's
But
only
then-
like 10 years between Anakin and
So
Obi-Wan.
now that's just like having an older brother.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so then now both of you guys are growing up together, you know.
So Ronaldo's got kind of an interesting thing going.
Yeah, he says, well, going back to the Mandalorian situation, he said there can be a problem if he takes off his helmet. He also says, I grew up with the prequels. When I was a kid, I thought they were the best movies ever made along with the original trilogy. But the older I got, I started to think, man, these prequels have so many problems.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like my world. I mean, I was 28. I mean, I would turn 29 that August, but I was 28 when The Phantom Menace came out.
Yeah.
And of course, I was so excited, like, wow, finally.
You were 28, I was 14.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was one of those things where it's like the prospect of a new Star Wars movie was mind-blowing because we hadn't had one since 83, and now it's 99. And I'll never forget, you know, the lights go down and that Star Wars logo blares out, and it's chill-inducing because you're just like, well, what's a Star Wars movie going to look like in 99?
Exactly.
With some of this technology. And I remember coming out of it, like I liked the movie a lot, and I was amped up about it. But it had a different vibe to me.
Yeah.
And I was kind of disappointed in some of the things, like the whole like Jar Jar thing just drove me insane. I'm like, why did they put this guy in there?
Well, for me, and that's cool because like for me, like of course I didn't grow up with the original trilogy in the way that you did. I mean, I grew up with them in the sense of they were part of my childhood because I saw them on tape. Mm-hmm. But when 99 hit, that was like my first experience in the theater watching a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, aside from I saw the original trilogy in the theater too when they re-released them, but
right, but I get it, like
new.
it was new.
It was new.
Yeah.
So I remember, when they first showed the trailer, I remember I saw the teaser trailer. It was on Channel 4. It was on the news.
Yep.
I remember I showed that, and I was just
yeah.
like, man, I remember they first showed like the Naboo ship, Starship, and Maul with the double-bladed, lightsaber, and I'm like, oh, this is sweet.
Which is funny because I thought that Maul was actually Prince Caesar.
Oh, yeah. I could
from
tell
like
from
Shadow of the Empire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the way that they described him in the
looks
book,
totally like him.
Kind of looks, and he had the double-bladed.
Even on the cover, though, of the book, he
Yeah.
kind of had the Maul
Yeah.
look. Yep.
So I was like, oh, no way, they're bringing him in?
Yeah. So when I first saw it, I'm like, okay. And I was, because this technology is kind of like my era, so to speak.
Right.
So I was amazed by it. I thought much like Ronaldo, I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Just because you're seeing new things in Star Wars, but it wasn't, and really until I got older and I started understanding film more. When you're a kid, you don't really understand it. You're just like, oh, okay, this is a cool factor. But when you really start understanding film, and you're like, man, it doesn't have that same weight though.
Right.
Like I didn't have those same emotions.
That's a good way of putting it.
You know what I'm saying? Like those same
that's a really good way of putting it. I didn't either.
Because, when Empire, when that came out, I wasn't even born yet. And the fact that when I watched it on tape for the first time, I got the same feelings that you all had when you all saw it in the theater. So for me, it's like, okay, well, I want those same feelings again when I seen this brand new, and I didn't have them.
Yeah, you know what it's like? It's like getting pure cocaine, and then the next time you get it, it's like been stepped on with like baking soda or something, and it's kind of like, granted, maybe this is like a little bit of a weird analogy.
I was about to say, whoa.
As
soon as you said cocaine, I'm like, okay, we're going there.
It's like, oh yeah, it's a lot like that. Sure. What have you been doing? Hey, man.
Rock band, right?
Well, it's just one of those things. And you know what's funny? It's like that's the only thing I could come up with. And I'm like, why? You know what? I'm going to go with it. It is kind of a weird analogy, especially since
For the record, Eric Vance has never done cocaine.
I've never done cocaine. I've drank cocaine.
The energy drink.
The energy drink. But I've never actually tried the illicit drug cocaine. But it just...
Our viewership is going to
I know a little bit about it, right? So, this is one of those things that it just seems like it's an analogy. Before I get myself into more trouble, Ronaldo says, but I can enjoy them. Not the best movies, but there's a great Star Wars in all three of them, and the story and concepts are great. And that's a really important point,
Absolutely.
Is the fact that I think part of the love that's coming back for the prequels, especially, number one, I think it's because it's been juxtaposed against the sequels. And now people are like, you know what? Maybe these weren't so bad.
Yep.
But
George Bush looks like a godsend now.
Yes. But I think that one of the things that people are realizing is that they are great stories.
Yeah.
That the execution wasn't the best, but if you actually look at the stories themselves, it was really good. And there were a lot of great moments.
Honestly, I think if you minus Jar Jar, or at least diminish his role, if you make 1 and 2 a little more lived in, not so much computer generated, I think fans will love them.
Well, don't forget, shortly after the Phantom Menace was released, for home video or whatever, it's like they came up with that Phantom edit thing where they edited all the Jar Jar scenes out, and even that greatly improved it. And one of the things that I thought was really funny was if you really track it, so you get Jar Jar all over the Phantom Menace, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, then he's a little bit less in Attack of the Clones. In Revenge of the Sith, he doesn't even say anything.
Right.
Like, he just walks away. So I think that even Lucas was kind of like, yeah, you know what? Let's just not do the Jar Jar thing too much. But I think that, yeah, they could have done. And another thing, and you and I have talked about this a lot, is that they should have started with 2.
Yeah.
They should have done like a 2 and then a 2.5 and then 3. Or what they could have done is they could have done 2, they could have done 3, and then they could have made 3 like the Jedi Purge and Vader going, show a little bit of the aftermath.
Yeah.
I think that would have been good.
Well, I mean, I like the fact that I like the concept of how they brought in Vader or Anakin at the time. Like, even,
as a little kid, though, do you really think we needed to see him as a little kid?
I think you can see him as a little kid.
Couldn't we do flashbacks?
No, but here's how I would do it. I don't think we find, if you do it, you don't do it until towards the end of the movie. So, like, if you spend majority of the Phantom Menace, like, dealing with other issues, the last maybe 40 minutes of the movie, that's when they, stumble upon Anakin. Hey, this kid can actually fly these pods, and I mean, his midichlorian count is really off the charts, whatever. You still want to keep that fine. But, that's when you discover him, and it's like, okay, at that point, okay, you know what? We're going to take him. He's going to become a Jedi. We're going to start training him, and then that's the end of that. Then, so you never get like this is pod race, and we don't get to see all that crap.
Yeah, no, see, that would actually
I'm just
work.
saying, like, if you just find a point where you could actually introduce Anakin, the little boy.
Yeah, kind of toward the end of the movie, like the last third of the movie or something.
Yeah, last third of the movie, you find him, he's like, okay, man, this kid is unusually strong with the Force. Like, who's his father? Well, there was no father. I just conceived him. Okay. Then, he and Obi-Wan kind of talk it over, like, yeah, you've heard that prophecy? Yeah, I've heard about that. Okay, boy, well. Then it's like, okay, now he's on the ship and he's on his way. Now, you might show him before, like, Qui-Gon can still die or something like that, and then you can still show him before the Jedi Council.
Well, it's like you said, you could just show, like, more, I mean, if you want to keep the same plot points and stuff, you could just show, you can make it a little bit more Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon
centric,
heavy.
Yeah. And then at that point, now, we're introduced to Anakin officially. Then when we get to 2, now you can pick up from 2 and just continue and carry on.
Tell you exactly what they should have done. Because you know how everybody hated the whole, okay, great, now we're getting a Star Wars film about, like, trade routes and bureaucracy, and, this isn't exactly what we signed up for. What they should have done was taken the plot of Master and Apprentice and made that episode 1. And then toward the end, they find Anakin and, deal with that. And maybe somehow Qui-Gon dies or something. You could still do the Darth Maul thing. Like, you could bring him in towards the end. He catches up with them or something. You do that, I think that would have been cool.
Definitely.
Okay, so there's a couple that Ronaldo has here. Anakin's love poems to Padme used to annoy me, but now I just laugh and say, man, if I ever talk to a girl like that, she'll slap me in the face. Probably either that or turn around and walk away in disgust. I don't know.
Unless she's a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, well. And
she
then,
might find it endearing. And
then also George Lucas waited years so that there was the best technology to make the prequels. He gave his best to deliver the greatest product possible. Can't get mad at him for that. That's true, but I think that, to your point, what you're talking about is like, when did episode 7 come out? Like 2015.
Yeah.
Okay, 2015 is a lot more high tech than 99. Yet the sequels feel a lot more lived in. They feel like the original trilogy.
Correct.
Obviously, they suffer from a lot of other problems. But it wasn't so CGI. They used a lot of practical effects, and they used a lot of CGI, and they certainly used a lot of the technology to its advantage, but it didn't look like... I mean, you had these poor actors in an entire green room by themselves having to act and pretend like they're acting with a bunch of other people. It was almost like Lucas went too far. Like, he saw that he had all this technology, and he wanted to overdo it.
Yeah, man, it's kind of like they even talked about that on the Mandalorian, where actually Carl Weathers in that whole galley special, where he was talking about like, yeah, like I'm actually interacting with objects and things, and like I can see, like, even though my background, it's not a green screen, but I can, I can see what's supposed to be there.
Yeah,
because there's an
it's
actual image there, and so now it puts me in my mind, and so like you don't have to kind of be as creative. I mean, like I said, hats off to Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson, man. And just everybody for
because they're like acting, and the closest thing they have is like a stick or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Look there, and do all these scenes and stuff, and his direction was kind of bad and stuff like that. I mean, it's just, again, you can't really compare it to The Mandalorian because they're kind of using new technology on that one.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're using new technology, just like George was using technology.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the same thing. It would be like because the technology they had for the sequels was kind of like what they had for the prequels, but it was used better.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that if George would have used his technology better, it would have come off a lot, smoother.
Yeah, and again, a lot of it was really his direction. If his direction had been better, then I think people would forgive the technology. Because part of the reason why he did go psycho with the technology was because he wanted to make sure that time period of Star Wars was really ultra clean and sanitary and beautiful and opulent and all these things, because he wanted it to be contrasted against the
destruction of the Empire.
The war-torn, dirty, dingy, type of a thing. And I think that's what he was actually going for. It's just he went a little overboard with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's good that the prequels are starting to get a little bit of love again, because honestly, look, these actors worked really hard to bring this to us. The stories were good. And one of the proofs of that is that a lot of these books that we read are prequel-era books, and, I mean, we're absorbed in them. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with the stories. It's just the execution of the films, Yep. All right, what do we got next?
All right, next we're going to talk about our favorite Vader moment.
Our favorite Vader moment. Well, I know yours. Probably the end of Rogue One, right?
It's I've said that one a lot, but I think I have another, much like Yoda.
It's like, no, there is another.
Oh, you want it now? I was gonna let you go.
I mean, hey, we're doing the show. Unless you want to, call in like later tonight or something and upload it to, from your phone to YouTube.
No, I was going to let you
go.
No,
I know you're going to let me go. But I'm going to let you go. I'll just be over here doing some lines of cocaine off of the computer while he's giving you the
I would probably say, like, my favorite Vader moment, it would probably be I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, there's so many Vader moments that are great, especially now that they're using him as a crutch and putting him in everything.
I would say almost any force choking thing that Vader does is always like my favorite, honestly. Like, I know it sounds very violent and malicious but honestly, it's just like, I think that's really when you really start to see the power of Vader. Because at first, he's choking someone who's like maybe like the distance between you and I right now. But then, like, in Empire, then you see him like he's in a completely different room or a completely different ship, and he's choking someone like on a screen, and it's just like, you can do that? It's like...
Yeah, well, that's one of those things that I think kind of flies under the radar for most people.
Yeah.
Like, they're not really thinking about... Nobody really thinks about that as this crazy cool force power, but it really is, because he's like, halfway across the galaxy somewhere, choking people through like a viewer.
Yeah, and then on top of that, he's like he always delivers like some of the greatest lines, right either when he's choking someone or he's about to.
I know, he's like the original one-liner action hero.
It's like, okay, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Like, that's an iconic line. But then,
that's like, that was so hilarious.
But then it's like the other part is like, all right, he's clumsy as he is stupid. And then, he turns around and then the guy's in the middle of talking. He's like, oh, yeah, Lord Vader. By the way, and then he just starts choking him. And then he carries a whole conversation with another guy. He's just like...
Oh, I know. While the dude's all choking and then he finally falls out. And it's just like... Meanwhile, Vader's talking to the other guy about his battle plans or something.
And the guy looks down at him like, yep, all right, cool. So
that's why, every time we talk about it, I always bring up that... Was it... Oh, it was Robot Chicken, right?
Yeah, we just act like
where it's just kind of look. But he does have a lightsaber, and that could really hurt us.
That is really real.
Yeah. So, let's just everybody pretend that the Force choking thing is a real thing, and, they pull him out. Here's your disguise. You come back as a new guy. I mean, it was just, it's one of the most brilliantly written ones, that I love. But there's actually a couple of favorite ones. Normally I always go to the one where, he's kind of like,
the
Force is with you, young Skywalker, but you're not a Jedi yet. That's definitely probably, I would have to say, my favorite. But what would tie with it? If it either ties with it or comes in second. I haven't decided which. Believe it or not, it's the scene between him and Luke on the AT-AT before he takes him to the Emperor. Because... that's the first time that we ever see Vader just kind of calmly talking and having a normal conversation with somebody.
Yeah, true.
He's kind of vulnerable at that moment. That's the first time that we ever see Vader somewhat vulnerable and trying to explain himself.
Even the whole moment, after Luke leaves, and he truly lets his guard down for us to see, and he leans on that rail.
Yeah.
You can't see his face, but you can see his face. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just
you can just see the anguish that he's having, and the fact that he's somewhat torn. And I mean, in a lot of cases, I think that those two moments, the one the Force is with you, is almost like that's the pinnacle of his power. That's just showing Vader at his
zenith,
absolute zenith. And then, of course, the other scene is really showing him in his most vulnerable, and it's something that we've never seen before.
That's true.
Through the whole thing. And I mean, those are just so compelling to me that I just think that it's it's crazy. Okay, so...
Ronaldo has his favorite Vader moment. My favorite Vader moment is the Rogue One scene because I've always wanted to see Vader just killing and destroying people. When I saw them in the theaters, I was like, finally.
Well, yes.
Absolutely.
And I mean, look, that's got to be basically up there, too. I mean, that's got to be number 3 for me because... that is the first time in film.
Yeah, film.
In film that we've ever seen Vader just be absolutely devastating.
Just merciless. I mean, just from the time how he arrives and you just hear the breathing and then he's just standing there with the saber and he just walks just forward calmly. He's just mowing everybody.
Calmly just mowing down everybody.
It's like no matter what you throw at him, no matter blaster bolts, I mean, he's just snatching weapons out of people's hands. He's blocking it. He's slashing folks. I mean, he's like the boogeyman.
And again, I mean, I think that what's cool about that, because a lot of people think that that's like a crutch type of thing or, okay, let's, in case of emergency, break Vader glass.
Right.
But I honestly think that that's a necessary scene to put in the Star Wars universe. Because first, it makes sense to do it at Rogue One because this is around the time that we're used to seeing him. Secondly, it's establishing his power. It's establishing his strength. This is why he's the devastating guy. Because Maul's not doing that.
Well, no, on top of that, it kind of, I don't want to say, in some ways it solves problems and creates it at the same time because you see that and then you see the battle with him and Obi-Wan. But I think that was, if you're looking at it in order, you will understand that. But then if you also understand going backwards, they had to show Vader like, okay, you know what, this is really what he would have been like.
Yeah, I think the whole Obi-Wan thing, I mean, again, we have to almost retcon this thing.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. I felt like it was a retcon
but I mean,
in a way.
But even though you're doing that, I mean, the reality is that Lucas said, no, these things are really heavy, and, that's why I still love this thing that I saw a couple of months ago, where it's basically all the directors of the Marvel films. They do like a podcast, like a video podcast kind of thing, and they basically interview a bunch of people about like these famous films that they were in. And so they did Mark Hamill. They did Mark Hamill for The Empire Strikes Back. And, of course, Mark Hamill was talking about, the fight choreography was kind of crazy. And he was like, a lot of people will go like, okay, you guys' thing isn't so dynamic or whatever. And he gets crap for it. But he was like, George told us these things were heavy. He's like, and then I go and watch the prequels. And he was like, and they're like flipping these things around with one hand. They're doing all this stuff. And, Mark's like, that's what we wanted to do. I mean, like, really, dude? Like, okay. Yep. I guess you kind of changed your mind about that a little bit. But, those are the kinds of things. But still, the way that you can retcon it in universe, there's two ways. And we brought this up when we were talking about, I think, like the best duels of the saga or something. One of the reasons why I'd always chosen the original trilogy duels is because there's emotional meaning behind all those duels.
Yeah, they have weight.
They have weight. And if you look at the Obi-Wan Anakin one, it's because there's like, it's really not about them dueling. It's about them facing each other after all those years. Mm-hmm. And so they're just kind of like toying with each other. They're not really trying to cut each other down. Mm-hmm. It's really more about their dialogue and their conversation.
True.
And just them sort of assessing their thing. And really, before it was going to get good, that's when Obi-Wan pulls his little disappearing act.
Well, and you got to understand, too, like, even Vader's hesitation on some things. I mean, last time he did fight him,
yeah, it didn't go well for him.
So Vader's kind of like, all right, all right, you got me last time, so you're not going to get me again, So
I mean, sure, we all wish that we had that. We could just drop in that crazy thing that YouTuber made.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, that's a duel we'd want to see. But again, as cool as it was, I don't think it would have held as much weight. Mm-hmm. And this is the way I feel about all the duels of the original trilogy. That's why I'm never bored by them. And actually, if you look at them, if you watch all the movies in order, like you were saying, they make sense to the plot of the films. Like, it doesn't seem out of place to see all these guys doing somersaults over each other in the prequels, and then in the original trilogy, they're not. Mm-hmm. Not to mention the fact that the Luke Skywalker Vader duels were a little bit more action packed.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. So Ronaldo has something else.
Yep, he says. Also seems like Vader has the best treatment since Disney bought Lucasfilm in movies, comics, novels, and/or games.
Well, a lot of that has to do with the fact that, it's where we're at with Vader. Because if you think about it, when Lucas was doing it in the original trilogy, that was establishing the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, then, 10, 15, 16 years later, he makes the prequels, but the prequels don't have Vader. Mm-hmm. I mean, technically at the very end, but they don't have him. Now, if he had... I could concede that point if Lucas had made an episode 3.5. Like if he made a movie that took place for the Jedi Purge and Vader was doing his thing, maybe. Mm-hmm. But you can't really say that. I mean, I get it and I understand, and I mean, I agree that Disney has handled Vader pretty well. But that's almost an unfair thing to say only because there wasn't really anything that Lucas could do with Vader. What he did with Vader, he needed to do, and it was like the story basically stopped before Vader would get good. Nobody ever told the story in between 3 and 4.
Right.
Until it got around to Disney. Mm-hmm. Now, who knows what Lucas would have actually, in reality, done with Vader. That's true.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know. I think that those are, all good moments.
Definitely.
I mean, is there anything else you could think of that's kind of like a sort of an honorable mention?
Well, I mean, of course, we want to talk about almost like the first appearance of him when he's like got that guy, that one trooper that he's like dangling in the air. I mean, that's kind of impressive.
Yeah, another one, if I had to go for an honorable mention, I think my honorable mention is going to be the first time in Empire Strikes Back, when he kneels down and he makes contact with the Emperor. Mm. Now, whether you're watching the original version of it with, I keep forgetting that actor's name. It's not Sebastian Shaw. That's the dude that was in the Return of the Jedi one. Clive Revel. That's it. So whether you're watching the original theatrical version of the movie or the special edition when it's replaced with Ian McDiarmid, and it has like extended dialogue and all kinds of cool stuff, I think that that's a really poignant scene as well. I don't know. It seems like my favorite Vader moments tend to be more of the like character-driven, more like thoughtful stuff. You know, a little bit more meat into them. Not that, you know, like I said, number 3 definitely is that insane scene at the end of Rogue One. But, you know, that's just Vader being Vader times like 100.
Right.
All right, well, I think it's time for my favorite segment, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do it. It's a segment we call Clear Your Mind. All right, this is a segment where we actually answer questions that you guys have sent in. That's right. Every week, we take a couple of questions from our viewers, and we answer them on the show, along with the chat. And speaking of the chat, Ronaldo has his honorable mention when he says, when he fights Ahsoka, that was emotional. That was a very good point.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, I forgot about that one, too.
Yeah.
Almost wish we hadn't moved on to Clear Your Mind, because that's like...
Yeah.
That's really cool. Maybe we'll get back to that. Maybe we'll get back to that one, because I wouldn't mind talking about that one a little bit. But what do we got first for our questions?
First question comes from Bennett Cook, and his question is Thrawn more powerful than Tarkin?
Oh, yeah. Now, granted, there is the novel, the Tarkin novel, right, where Tarkin is like hunting, and he's, you know, there's like on his planet, there was a some sort of like rite of passage kind of thing, where they basically drop him in like a forest, and, you know, there's all these like crazy dangerous animals, and he has to take them out. That said, Thrawn's a Chiss. The Chiss are like these like super warrior guys that, I mean, there's just, with all of Tarkin's skill, Tarkin's not as smart as Thrawn. He's not as strategic as Thrawn. He's not as strong physically as Thrawn. I mean, Thrawn basically is like Tarkin on steroids.
He's like Captain America.
Yeah,
right?
he basically has him beat in every sense of the word. But that said, don't get me wrong, Tarkin's very much a powerful adversary, and he's definitely not somebody you would want to mess with.
True.
You know, I don't know. You got anything to add to that one?
I would just say the fact that Tarkin, the fact that Tarkin actually kind of hung with Vader, you know, like when they had that whole challenge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that,
in that comic.
Yeah, in the comic. And Tarkin, you know, very nearly, you know, got to Vader. So I think that says a lot. But, I mean, if you're just talking about just, you know, head to head, if you will.
Well, and the other thing, too, is that Thrawn and Vader kind of, you know, there was a couple of times, especially, because you see this in the Thrawn trilogy, particularly in Alliances, and it goes back and forth between when Thrawn dealt with Anakin Skywalker and did a mission with him, and then, of course, the present day at that point where Thrawn was doing a mission with Vader. It's a very interesting book because you basically get to see Vader pretty much like the chemistry he has with Thrawn as Anakin and reacting to him as Anakin, and then also again as Vader. And what's funny is, of course, Vader remembers dealing with Thrawn. And there's been a couple of times where, you know, Vader was really tempted to kill Thrawn. I mean, he was just like, he was going to do it. But then, you know, he thought better of it. And what was interesting was Thrawn wasn't even nervous. He knew that Vader was going to do it, and he actually kind of taunted him a little bit. Because he's more powerful than what he would appear, as is Tarkin. So it's actually not a bad comparison because, and again, this could be like maybe one of those, Thrawn wins 80-90% of the time, but there might be that 10 or 20% that Tarkin wins.
Best, yeah.
But overall, I would say, yeah. I'd say that overall,
Thrawn.
Thrawn's more powerful. Who's next?
Valia Karn. And her question is, why do you think they brought Sabine into Mandalorian?
Money and viewers.
Well, I mean, I was the Darksaber. I mean, that's just got to be
Yeah,
like,
well,
you know.
But here's the question, though. Did they bring the Darksaber in because they wanted to bring Sabine in, and that was the way to do it? Or they brought the Darksaber in, and then they figured, hey, you know what? You know what I mean? It's kind of like...
Well, it could be, and it could be a combination of both, honestly. It could be like we need both of these, because for ultimately the story that we're trying to tell, we need both characters, if you will. I'm almost calling like the Darksaber a character, but... You know, I think it's one of those things. It serves the story to the point where it's like, okay, well, what's a good way for, you know, to move this Baby Yoda character? Okay, what are we gonna do with it? Okay, we got this guy that wants to be as powerful and be, you know, almost like another Vader, or he wants to be, you know, he wants to ascend to prominence. So he acquires, you know, a weapon that's something different, and you know, no one has ever seen the Darksaber. There's a lot, and of course it has the rich history with the Mandalorian people anyway, so it's like it fits. And then it's like, oh, well, then yeah, we could also bring Sabine in because Sabine also had, you know, so I think it's all in conjunction, honestly.
Well, I would even go a step further than that, in the sense of the show's called The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
She's a Mandalorian. She's like other than maybe Bo-Katan, she's probably the most prominent true Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because Boba Fett and Jango don't count.
Right.
So it's kind of like if you have a show that's about the Mandalorians, you kind of have to bring Sabine in. You know what I mean? It's like it wouldn't make sense. It'd be different, obviously, if she were killed before then or something like that. But I mean, if she's around,
yeah,
and you have all these Mandalorians, and then and given the type of person that she is, if they were forced underground by the Empire, she'd want to do something about that.
All right. Especially with, like I said, the Darksaber being out, that instantly just warrants her to be around.
Yeah, that's even like carrying it exactly. You know, and that's one of those things that I think that a lot of times there's a lot of connective tissue that they could put in Star Wars between a bunch of different things that they don't always do. And I think that they're starting to do that now. You know, I think that they're starting to look at, well, how do we connect Rebels with Mandalorian? How do we connect, you know, all these things? And this isn't even counting bringing out the High Republic stuff yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're putting Yoda in there. It's kind of like I don't think they're cheesing out. I think that they're really doing the right thing. But I do think that we should just go back for a second on this Ahsoka Darth Vader thing. So what do you think about it?
Oh, I mean, that's definitely like one of the greatest duels.
It's true. I forgot how emotional it was.
Yeah, the music and everything that made it very emotional, I think.
I'll go a step further and say emotion-wise, I would argue that is the most emotional of the lightsaber battles.
Definitely.
Because you can point to Luke and Vader because that's his son.
Mm-hmm.
You could definitely point to Anakin and Obi-Wan because that's like a master, you know, apprentice thing, and they were
brothers pretty much.
They were brothers pretty much, and now they find themselves on opposite sides. It's, you know, it's almost like those old Civil War movies where it's kind of like you have two guys that grow up together, and then the Civil War hits, and one's fighting for the North, one's fighting for the South, and, you know, that kind of thing. So, but the Ahsoka Anakin thing is a little bit more emotional to me because she's like, she really looked up to him, and he really felt protective of her. It was more of
almost like a father-daughter.
Almost like a father-daughter kind of thing. And there was something there that was just, it's different.
But not only that, I think it's what made it kind of gut-wrenching, I guess, for everybody was that, like, they both thought each other were dead.
Yeah. And of course, they
so-
probably never thought that they were going to meet in battle.
So when they realized that, okay, and then now it's like, okay, you know, how close they were. So, like, you know, Ahsoka's trying to reach into the Force and find out, like, who this Sith Lord is. And then Anakin is like, the apprentice lives. And, you know, and then when Ahsoka realizes, like, oh, crap, it's Anakin, like it's a mind blown for both of them.
Sure.
And now they both realize that they're both still alive, but now Ahsoka's realizing, like, whoa, like, you're a whole Sith Lord out here. Like, you're not just a little disillusioned. Like, you've gone all the way completely dark with this. And, you know, so now, like, Ahsoka's kind of like, well, crap, you know, you guys. And then she's looking at, like, the guys that she has with her, Kanan and Ezra. She knows how powerful Anakin was. And she's like, yeah, you guys have no hope against him.
Well, the thing that I find really interesting, too, is that the difference between that and the Obi-Wan Anakin thing is that Obi-Wan was there right at Anakin's fall.
Mm-hmm.
And so his anguish and pain comes from the fact that he's watching his friend slip away.
Mm-hmm.
And he's reaching out to him, and then comes the realization,
I got to do what I got to do.
there's no return. I'm going to have to do what I have to do. That's different because Ahsoka is growing up, well, not totally growing up, but she's like going along seeing this Darth Vader guy and doing all these atrocities and everything else, and then fighting and, you know, all this other stuff. And then to come to the realization that, like, holy crap, Darth Vader is Anakin, it's more shocking.
Yeah.
It's
Because
like,
they never, because like you said, at the end of Clone Wars, you see, like, okay, Vader comes where after, like, Ahsoka, you know, leaves and whatever, she buries her lights, you know, she drops her lightsabers or whatnot. The ones Anakin built for her, mind you.
yep.
Vader comes up and, you know, he finds the sabers in the snow. And then he's like, okay, well, these are the ones, you know, and then, of course, he sees the helmet that has, like, Ahsoka's thing. So it's like, once again, he's lost someone that's close. He's already lost Padme.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's lost another one. He's lost his mom. He's lost Padme. And now he feels that he's lost Ahsoka, too. So, like, the 3 women in his life are now gone. So he thinks. And then, like, later on in Rebels, when he pops up, and, you know, that's when he was like, wait, the Padawan is still here. And, you know, even then, like he said in the battle, we don't have to be enemies.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't trying to kill her. He didn't want to kill her. He
No,
wanted to let her.
and that's it. There's very few
there's
people that Vader doesn't want to kill.
Yeah, there's very few people that Vader is very forgiving for. And
Yeah.
she was one of them.
Yeah.
Like, he would just let her just turn around and walk away. You didn't see it. This never happened. And the Ahsoka's just like, nah, I can't. I know who you are, and I know how powerful you are as Anakin, so I can only imagine what you're like as a Sith Lord in her mind. So she's like, yeah, there's no hope. Who else is going to, I mean, there's, you know, she thinks Obi-Wan is gone, you know, so I was like, well,
that's what's interesting,
you know.
because if you think about it, Anakin gave Obi-Wan that very same choice.
yeah.
He was like, basically, look, man, you know, join me or don't stand in my way, and we're cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I'm on the side of the Republic, which he, in a weird way, kind of was.
Yeah.
At least in his mind, too. And he was just like, look, you know, it's kind of like, look, I'm not trying to do this, but if you stand in my way, then it's on.
Mm-hmm.
So and the other thing that's kind of interesting, too, is that whole scene where Anakin gave her the lightsabers and they have that little kind of touching moment.
Yeah.
It very much reminds me of that scene in Episode 3 where Anakin's about to go off or something and Obi-Wan had come back and, you know, they were having that sort of, you know, you've always been, you know, a friend or whatever. I forgot what the exact dialogue was, but there was that moment. And it's so sad because you know.
That's the last moment they're friends.
That's the last moment they're friends. And you know from that scene, this is it. It's never going to be the same after this. This is the last time that these guys are going to face each other as friends and brothers.
Yep. Because from this point on,
and it makes it so sad. And I think that Filoni did that on purpose in Clone Wars when he had a mirror scene like that with Anakin and Ahsoka, because that was the last time they faced each other, really, as friends.
Yeah.
Because after that, they were kind of like off on their own separate thing. And then, of course, Anakin, it overlaps with Episode 3, which I thought was a brilliant move on their part.
Definitely. Especially Maul trying to warn Ahsoka, like, no.
That was an unexpected thing, too.
Yeah,
that was kind of cool, too, where he was, like, really trying to be like, listen, let's team up, let's go fight. I was so heartbroken when she just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that would actually be kind of cool.
But, she just couldn't trust him, and I get it,
Yeah, I mean, you understand it. It's kind of like, look, man, you're basically going to be a victim of the decisions that you made in life. There's consequences to it. And it's like, it's unfortunate that if she had listened to Maul, that, things might have turned out a little differently. Because then you would have had Maul, Ahsoka, and Yoda all pretty much attacking the Emperor at the same time. Or maybe it would have been Maul, Ahsoka, and Mace. I don't know. It's hard to tell, like, at certain points, like, at what point was some of this stuff happening?
Yeah.
But, I mean, we'll never know. But with you guys, haven't forgotten about you guys. What do you think is the strongest or most powerful or your favorite Vader moment? Be sure to let us know in the comments below. And, hey, listen. We're about to wrap up, but, if there's anything in the show that you guys want to talk about in the comments section, it doesn't end here. We check the comments all the time, and we'll chat with you guys. Just ask Jason. We've had some really, really good conversations in the chat. So, basically, we'll be here the same time. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button if you like this extremely long video. Over 3 hours today. And, be sure to check us next Friday at 8 o'clock. Make sure you hit us up on our social media at headtoheadsw on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can visit us on our website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. And you can also donate to the show, help support us, and, so we can keep bringing this to you. And, of course, when we do get new episodes of The Mandalorian, let us know if you guys want us to do a separate review show or if you want us to include that as part of our show here. So until then, I think that's going to do it for us for this week.
Yes,
I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at headtoheadsw. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.